We gotta tell, share, we cheer, and parade. Each good up girl, bring it like the maze. Candace was spitting fire, but truth was the catch. YouTube said no, now it's time to detach. Spreading lies like they make her a queen, but this platform won't let that be seen. Gish go up girl, shining bright like a star. In a world of confusion, she'll take us so far. With joy in our hearts and truth in our hands, we dance to the beat of love's great demands. Rigid Macron, let's set the record straight. Haters gonna hate, but love is great. Jewish rabbis in the mix, standing proud. In a world of chaos, we'll laugh loud. Don't let the bigots take your joy, nah. In this game of truth, we gon' raise the bar. Gish go up girl, shining bright like a star. In a world of confusion, she'll take us so far. With joy in our hearts and truth in our hands, we dance to the beat of love's great demands. So here's to the stories that make us all thrive. With laughter and wisdom, we keep hope alive.
Okay, so you just heard the accordion rap theme for this week for Gish Gallop Girl. I am your intrepid researcher slash co-host, Thomas Anderson, and with me as always is
Matthew Anderson, and sorry if that burp picked up. I tried to hold it in there.
Yeah. So we are staying hydrated, and he's doing much better this week.
Much better.
So we're going to get into a really, really fun roller coaster of a week. If anyone was hoping we would get through a few more pages of Blackout this week, I am sorry to disappoint you. We had a crazy week, and I had to devote my normal research time to other practical pursuits, so we'll have to catch up to it next week, life willing. But on the plus side, there are only 4 Candace episodes from this past week. Candace got herself thrown off of YouTube for a whole week. That's what the rapper was talking about there. And she hasn't been clear on why. She was posting to Rumble, which is a video space that she shares with other top minds that got banned from YouTube, such as Nick Fuentes, who she will be addressing in the first episode this week. For now, let's get started with the cold open from episode 61.
About her fucking theme.
Yeah. Okay, so after the cold open, which I cut the wrong thing there for, so no one's going to get to hear it, I have a long clip to play of Candace explaining in her own words why she's on Rumble. You know what? Actually, I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull it up on one of my podcast apps here because it really should be heard. Here we go. Podbean, which is who we're also hosted by.
Okay.
I'm only following one person on Podbean. Candace Owens. Here we go.
That's kind of funny. We're using the same service that we're being hosted by.
Here we go.
All right, I'm really excited about this. Let's get ready to rumble. We are on Rumble, not on YouTube today, obviously, because I got fired from YouTube. Darn, man, I'm having quite the year. I don't know what is going on. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the reasons why I've been kicked off of YouTube and demonetized on YouTube. I think we all know, so we're going to have to say that out loud. And we're also going to get into just talking about neocons in general, because Tucker Carlson is now firing back at his critics in the media who had so much to say about him hosting a quote-unquote Hitler apologist. Now we're talking about Hitler apologetics. I don't know what we're even saying anymore. I think what they meant to say was he hosted a historian and he had some information that most of the public is not aware of on his show last week. So there's a lot going on, and it seems like a lot is getting exposed. I'm super happy, remarkably happy and positive about it. And we're going to cover it all today on Candace.
Okay, so that was the actual cold open for that show. So there we go. After the cold open, I have a long clip to play of Candace explaining in her own words why she's on Rumble, which is her version of events as to what the hell happened.
All right, so here's the deal. We knew it was coming. Everybody knew it was coming. Everyone said it was coming, except for the people who are just so far down in conspiracy rabbit hole. They were like, Candace Owens is definitely an op, and why hasn't her account been banned yet? I'm like, I just started my account in June. Maybe it hasn't been banned yet because I wasn't given a chance. Give me like 2 months before you start demanding that I get strikes to prove that I'm a real one. It's so ridiculous when I see this stuff. But anyways, so the energy was building, is what I would say. The energy was building because I think back after October 7th, obviously, there was sort of this command that everybody had to suddenly align themselves with Israel in a way that certainly became uncomfortable for a lot of people when they just kept dropping bombs and the death count just kept going up. And once you get to 18,000 plus children being murdered, people are going to have some questions. Honestly, long before 18,000 children were murdered, people started having questions. And you can't ask those questions in polite American society if you're in politics, because we know as a fact the AIPAC spends, I think this election cycle, over $100 million in our elections, and that money is well spent. It's to make sure that journalists and politicians stay in line or else. So we've got like Thomas Massey and maybe like 2 other congressmen that are willing to stick their necks out, and that's about it. And in terms of political commentators, virtually no one in the mainstream. And so when I did not buck to the trend, obviously then came the absolute demands that I get fired and I lose my platform. And then when I did leave my former place of employment and they got what they wanted, they still were not satisfied because I survived it. Like, that's the thing. Like, when they come after you, you're not supposed to survive it. Like, they're supposed to be canceled. You're supposed to be, I guess, just so down and out without your old friends and the old platforms that you couldn't possibly go on. Well, I did go on. The show's been more successful than ever. I've been more positive and more happy than ever because I'm finally fully in control of everything myself. Like, I get to decide when I want to work, and it's totally working with my schedule and my family schedule, and that drives them even more mad. And so what happened? Well, I beat Rabbi Shmuley in a debate, and we had some accounts that were quite literally, even ahead of the debate, instructing their followers to mass report my YouTube page, that I would get a ton of strikes and that I would get demonetized, because when they can't beat you in the marketplace of ideas, then they just try to manipulate the market. They're like, let's just get her banned and demonetized so that she can't make money because people are still watching her content. And that's exactly what they did. And I'll show you this tweet first from Austin. Awesome Jew is the handle that's on Twitter, because you're going to really love what Sebastian Gorka follows this up with. So Awesome Jew actually instructs his followers to mass report me on X. You can see, you can report her YouTube channel here. It was a thread that was done, even showing the screenshot of what to press. And Awesome Jew began this, and you can see here, go down and put hate speech against a protected group. And he showed how to do this, he or she showed how to do this with the Tristan Tate interview that went viral, and they were super angry about it. And instantly found success. YouTube took that interview down. We said nothing wrong, but they gave that exact reason, hate against a protected group. And that person then celebrated online and said, yay, great, here's the email I got back. Thank you, Team YouTube, for removing this filth. Like, we did this ourselves. It has been removed. I gave the instructions and they listened. And so this campaign of every episode that went up that week, by the way, one of the episodes right after that was my episode with Ye. I knew this was coming, and I thought that YouTube would do better than to allow it to happen because it was so obvious, but obviously it wasn't something that they took into account, and they hit me with 3 back-to-back reports culminating into a strike and culminating into me being demonetized. Now, what's super funny about this is neocons. Neocons are always funny. They're just...
No. According to YouTube, YouTube removed 3 episodes from her channel, including an interview with Kanye West from 2022 for violating the platform's hate speech policies. In the interview with Ye, He made anti-Semitic remarks and claims about Jewish people controlling the media, which violates YouTube's policy against content containing conspiratorial claims targeting protected groups. YouTube suspended her channel for 1 week and fully demonetized her account, meaning she can no longer make money from her content on the platform. That suspension came after Owens made other controversial statements recently, including comments about Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson that were seen as anti-Semitic, specifically that Schneerson, quote, preached Jewish supremacism, which we recall from the last episode, among a lot of other shit about the beloved rabbi. YouTube stated that she had previously violated their policies, including advertiser-friendly guidelines and community guidelines. The platform cited her for sharing content that, quote, incites a hatred against, promotes discrimination, disparages or humiliates an individual or group of people, end quote. Owens blamed Zionists for mass reporting her content, leading to the suspension and demonetization. She can no longer make money on YouTube, which I see as a win, but it does put the state of the Candace Cups in some weird space now. You know, because she was selling them with the intention of releasing a new one every time she crossed a milestone of another 1 million followers on YouTube.
You know, I forgot about the Candace Cups for a minute there. And when you said Candace Cup, the first thing mentally that popped up in my head was like a sports cup. But with like Candace stamped into it. Like for extreme sports and shit, one of those sports cups.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, you know,
I was
crotch
thinking
protection.
of well, see, I was thinking, when you said sports cups just now, I was thinking of like a jock strap type thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Oh.
Yeah,
I thought you meant
we're on the same page here.
Oh, I thought you meant just now like the kind of thing like you hold like a big gulp in.
Oh, no. I meant like cups as in crime protection.
Okay.
Yeah, those. We're on the same page on the kind of cup here.
I mean, you know, amongst most of the population, you know, seeing her name is kind of a cock block. It is protection in a way, you know.
Look, if I go to a girl's house, I don't think anything in me will allow me to continue to date her if I see a Standis cup, unless there's the explanation that's you know, like my mom's or my dad's.
Here's the
like,
thing.
Okay,
I want to hear the story attached to that.
Fair.
I want to hear the story attached to that. Like, oh, do you like Candace Owens? And then see what happens. If she goes, oh God, no, she's terrible, but that belongs to, you know, ex relative. Okay, all right.
That's acceptable. Yeah. No.
But if it's like, oh yeah, I think she's great. Cool. I'm gonna go. Why does every guy do that? Yeah. It's not like I'm gonna poke holes in the condoms or anything. You know, you just said it right there. You just said it right there. Oh God. But yeah, at the time of this writing, we can do a little grave dancing. She had 2.4 million followers on YouTube, and she only has just over 134,000 on Rumble. That's when I wrote that the other day. She's actually up to 145,000 on Rumble.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not quite the end of a career, but it is a whole lot less.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Candace spends several minutes talking about Sebastian Gorka, a prominent conservative that danced on the fall of her YouTube channel. He sucks, and I hope I don't have to cover him here much, but he has been an advisor to Trump in the past, was involved in Breitbart News, and hosts a program called America First. I'm skipping over Candace's beef with him, which takes another 4 minutes off the episode. Then Candace has an interesting take on the state of Republican politics.
Oh. Wow is correct. So nobody's falling for this. It's weird for me that they can't see the problems that all of us are predicting down the line. Like, the party is shifting. It's not shifting. It's actually just becoming more emblematic of what it was that we were told we were supposed to stand for as conservatives within the MAGA party. We were told that what we were rallying around was an American first message. And now that message is being routinely dismissed as Jew hater, as Jew hatred, as anti-Semitism, as Vladimir Putin puppetry, whatever it is. And it's just begging the question, what direction is the party going into? Now we're seeing a situation where people who aren't adapting to this more neocon messaging are just getting screamed at. Like, why aren't you guys getting on board with more pro-choice messaging? Why aren't you guys getting more on board with censorship? Why aren't you guys getting more on board with war? Why aren't you guys getting more on board with children and Palestinian children being blown up? What's wrong with you? Don't you see that Trump needs to win? I hope that he does win, of course, because we're looking at two different options here, and there is very clearly a better option, which is Donald Trump. But if he doesn't win, are there going to be some people that regret not addressing this? Not addressing this sort of obvious split that's happening right now? Not addressing the fact that all of the people who positively hated Trump, were very anti-Trump, now really love him and are being brought in, while the people who were hardcore Trump are asking questions about this particular messaging and essentially being told, like, you guys can go out into the cold. We don't really care. November's around the corner. We'll see. We'll see who's right. We'll see who's wrong. But yeah, I just don't have a great feeling about it, is what I'll say.
Yeah, so that's telling. Mostly because the way the Republicans have shown themselves, even especially at the RNC recently, is that they're fully behind the Trump/MAGA movement. I don't expect Candace to be much on the front lines, mostly because she wasn't at the RNC this year. But if she actually has some insider knowledge of how things are going, a Trump failure at the ballot box could really unravel a lot of these people. A Republican failure across the country would definitely do more, but I think it would make the unhinged and violent ones a lot more dangerous. I'm not saying this to point fingers at anyone, but if you have a flag-waving MAGA type around, you might want to keep a side eye on them. She goes on to discuss Tucker and Daryl Cooper again. I rarely do this on this show because at this point you all know what to expect, I hope. But I'm sorry, you might lose a brain cell or two on this.
Right, Tucker Carlson, this is like the interview that no one will stop talking about. I do not know, well, actually, I do know exactly the reasons why the neocons are up in a tizzy, because no one can touch the World War II narrative, because World War II has now become a religion. I don't even know what else to say. It's just a religion. It's very performative. You can't ask any questions. You can't interject any alternative facts. You can't prod the narrative in any way. Otherwise, you are going to get hit really hard and called a litany of names. You can get called a Holocaust denier. You can be called a Hitler apologist. You can be called a Nazi or a Nazi apologist. And there's very little fact in there. They're just calling you names. And usually when people do that, when they employ that sort of psychology, it's because they're lying about something, right? There would be no other reason to do it. I mean, if you gave yourself like a different situation and you were not allowed to prod the narrative, you would suddenly, your instincts would go, what am I missing here? Like if you had to Sherlock Holmes it, and you were actually a detective, and you get the phone call, and a woman's like, my husband beat me, and you go and you see her, and she's got black eyes, and she's got children in the corner that are looking scared, and you go, oh, okay. And she's like, are you going to arrest him? And you go, yeah, of course I'm going to arrest him. I'm just going to take a report. I'm going to talk to the kids. And then she's like, no, you can't talk to the kids. We passed speech laws. What do you mean I can't talk to the kids and see what they saw? No, we passed speech laws. I can't tell you what's happened. And then you can't also ask the neighbors what they saw. You can't introduce any other facts other than what exactly I'm telling you. Otherwise, you're a person that supports domestic abuse. This is kind of the psychology regarding World War II, where they are essentially saying that if you do your job, and your job, of course, is to try to get a full picture of events, right? It's the only way that you can actually prevent things from happening in the future. Truly, if your fear is that something could reoccur in the future, then you would want that piece of history or that particular event to be fully audited, every aspect of it, every leader, every person involved, so you can actually say the reason we're doing this is the aspiration is to never happen again. when you start saying don't speak about it, that is not going to prevent things from happening again. It's actually just going to make people arrive at their own conclusions, and they're naturally going to be suspicious of you. So when Tucker Carlson hosted Daryl Cooper on his show, a historian, and he began introducing some alternative facts about Winston Churchill, which were fascinating, and by the way, is not something that is new. I obviously got in trouble for the same thing by telling you guys to watch a documentary that I didn't produce. The BBC, PBS, they shared this documentary. It was shared with me actually by a priest, and it shocked me, called The Savage Peace. I never knew that we genocided the Germans in peacetime. And by we, I mean the Allies. We did. It's a fact. I'm sorry if that fact upsets people. I'm so sorry that I am sharing with you guys the truth about an ethnic cleansing that took place with 12 million Germans. I'm sorry that I know that. That's the crime. They don't want people even knowing the horrific things that the Allies took place in, like Dresden, right? They don't want you talking about Dresden. And you go, why is that? And Tucker Carlson has the right idea about why that might be. So he went on to Charlie Kirk's show, and here's what he had to say about the blowback that he received. Take a listen.
Okay. Go ahead.
3 things. One, that was a long-winded thing. Just to say, listen to what Tucker Carlson said, by the way, guys. That, okay.
Uh-huh.
Secondly.
Yeah.
Has you never heard of the fucking History Channel?
Yeah.
Which, as I remember, got nicknamed by at least a few people I know as, oh yeah, Hitler History Channel, because during the month in which D-Day took place, they play nothing but World War II, primarily Hitler-focused history.
And then what did we get, like, on History Late Night? It was, like, Nazis and aliens.
Yeah.
Which led into, eventually, ancient aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's funny,
and even then, during that D-Day World War II month, where they do nothing but play World War II documentaries and history shit, late night, they still play the fucking Hitler and aliens thing. Well, where it's like, he had otherworldly...
Oh my God.
And it's like, oh my Christ. He wasn't a super genius from space, guys.
No, he was not. And here's the other thing, too, right? I first heard about it being called the Hitler Channel when I was reading one of the books that your grandmother had. It was written by Bill O'Reilly, who is himself a conservative windbag.
Yeah.
And a sexual pervert and all kinds of other shit. Like, a bad person to work for and a bad person to listen to. And she had one of his books on the shelf, and I was like, oh, this is a good way to kill 280 pages.
Yeah.
So I read the thing. And in it, I laughed because he was talking about how the History Channel was called in, like, TV circles as the Hitler Channel. Because if you wanted to get anything over there, you had to kind of, like, work with them a little bit.
Yeah.
And, he was like, I decided not to have content on there. And I'm like, yeah, well, because you don't really talk about history, so, fuck off.
And I don't remember what the third thing was, but it popped up in the middle there.
You might remember it in the, let me...
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was clunky, that whole clip there. First of all, of course, that shit she said about 12 million Germans being killed and all the rest, we have covered many times before, and it isn't worth repeating right now. The fact is, there were many full audits of the Nazi remnants of Dub Dub Dos. That's how we know a lot of things about the Third Reich. I didn't invent Dub Dub Dos. I give that to Robert Evans. But it took years to unravel a lot of things, send the right people to prison for the noise, or, unfortunately, to jobs in the Allied nations and the Soviet Union.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
She says, we genocided, and by we, I mean the Allies. Is she forgetting that the Allies were not explicitly just America, and that they were all of the countries that were getting fucked in the ass?
Yeah, the Allies were America, and, most of Europe that wasn't allied with Germany as an Axis power. Like, Hungary escapes a lot of, like, derision.
Yeah.
Other countries like that. Yeah, well... Cooper is and was full of shit. Candace isn't helping with repeating the phrase alternative facts as that is a known key phrase for, quote, I'm about to say some bullshit that's probably Nazi adjacent right now, end quote. I'm never going to say that Winston Churchill was perfect because he was just a man, but no one has ever gone around saying he was perfect and that every choice he made was correct. But in the service of keeping his country safe, he did what he could. If the crown had disagreed with his choices, he could have been removed by royal decree. That is still a power that they have. Seeing as how that didn't happen, and also that Britain did not fall to Nazi control, I think it's safe to say that he did a good job overall. Which is, of course, why he is despised among Nazis today. Anyway, Tucker goes on to defend Daryl Cooper on Charlie Kirk's show, and we're not playing it as it doesn't add anything to the overall tone. Candace goes on to talk more shit.
Yeah, I like that he's terming that a founding myth, because at a certain point you do realize that aspects of what we were told, the way in which we were told about World War II, and I'm speaking specifically about American education, since that's the only education that I've had, a public education in America, you are told the story like it's a fairy tale. Reflectively, like honestly, genuinely, when I reflect on it, it's stupid what we are taught about World War II. It's so black and white. There's no in between. It doesn't even answer questions. Like when you have a question, there's random, well, we just had to drop an atomic bomb to end the war, and we were amazing, and they were awful, and the Germans were doing this to the Jews, and then when you ask the question, like, why was any of this happening, you're not allowed to ask any questions. Right? Like, thinking is genuinely not allowed when it comes to World War II, despite the fact that we'd spend such a significant amount of our time in the classroom and also in Hollywood focusing on World War II. And there's a lot of reasons why that is, and when you start learning the truth, it's shocking. For example, Dresden, like we remember Rabbi Shmuley, I guess, relying on the American public school system, just kind of casually said like it was nothing. What are you talking about? Who cares about what we're doing to the Palestinians? Who cares if we're dropping more bombs? I mean, we did it in Dresden. No one cares. He said, Winston Churchill's a hero, right? Winston Churchill's a hero, so who cares? We're going to do Dresden again. And I just have to ask the public, do you understand what was done in Dresden? I remember seeing these images, and I'm going to show them to you right now because they still astonish me, of just imagining this German woman, this town filled, again, with Christians, not just Christians, but you also had a ton of refugees who were escaping the Bolshevik Holocaust that were living in Dresden. Look at these images of...
Yeah, no, first off, the Bolsheviks did not suffer a Holocaust. Or the Russians did not suffer a Holocaust at the hands of the Bolsheviks. That's fucking wrong. That's known as soft Holocaust denial. Secondly, this particular thing is dumb and backed up by no historical context whatsoever. Let's even just think about this beyond the research I had to do to confirm the truth. Candace is saying that Russians fled the Bolshevik Revolution and decided to stay in Nazi-controlled Germany, in Dresden, the city that was the foremost military manufacturing hub and home of the Wehrmacht, which had moved its headquarters from Berlin. Dresden was not a place to be if you were not an ethnic German. She goes on to describe several photos supposedly from the after bombing, and since the only people that would have been present for that would have been Nazis, I find such photos suspect.
Yeah, like the only thing that I could possibly believe of somebody that would be there would have been maybe one of those not one of, but those sweatshop style bomb makers.
Yeah.
And those would have been the only innocents, I'd say, that would have been bombed.
I mean, if they weren't, hi-ho about their whole job, because
quite a few of them were.
There were 127 manufacturing houses in Dresden. They made everything from full-ass machines to machine parts for things like cockpit seals and things like that.
Yeah.
Right down to, guns and ammo, and just 127 factories from cottage size to actual factory floors.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, she will go on and on and on about how millions of Christians died. Yes, because as we've covered before, 95% of Germany identified as Christian, either Catholic or Protestant.
Yeah.
With the main crux of them being Protestants. Mm-hmm. But still, yes, millions of Germans were Christians because millions of Nazis were Christians. You know? Like, I mean, and to be fair, the ones that were anti-Hitler and stuff did exist.
Yeah.
But that's why we had trials afterward. So that you can try people to see how their actions in the war that were known, and, you know, maybe the, testimonies of people got a lot of soldiers and officers off the hanging rope.
Yeah. Oh,
because they were like, look, they were great. You know,
yeah.
They didn't want to do it. They were great, but it was them. You know, it was their family or mine.
Well, there was one.
Like they weren't. Like not all of them were terrible.
Yeah.
But that's what the trials were about.
Well, there was one that I remember seeing a story about, and I don't know if it was true, but
yeah.
Basically it was when the Nazis were doing the door-to-door attic checks.
Yeah.
Like attic and basement, anywhere that a Jew could hide.
Yeah.
One of the Nazi troops popped his head up into an attic, and there was a family of Jews there, and the family had reported that they heard the captain, you know, yelling in German at the guy, "Well, is there anybody up there, Private?" And he goes, "No, sir, nobody up here." And he dropped back down, and he managed to survive the war, made it to trial, and they came and testified as...
Yeah.
He didn't turn us in. He could have.
Right. Yeah, he could have easily just said, "Yep."
Mm-hmm.
Start shooting. Mm-hmm. You know, shoot through the ceiling. Like, yeah. I mean, he could have done anything. I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, like, yeah, Dresden was not some innocent town.
No.
You know. But hey, Candace gets to be wrong more. So.
The Christians who were incinerated on the eve of Ash Wednesday. See another photo here. That's a woman, just live incinerated. And when you look into the things that were said about this, the fact that it was referred to as a Holocaust, could you imagine the amount of bodies that were there? Waking up and people are quite literally have all just been burned to death, women and children. And think about how odd it is how Rabbi Shmuley jumped up there and just said, like, whatever, this is just what we do sometimes, so who cares if we're doing this to women and children in Palestine? So that's one aspect of why they like to protect the narrative, and why in every movie that you ever see that you can think about a villain, they always give them a German accent. It's almost like this kind of don't want people to prod the narrative, and we're still trying to insist on Americans only thinking of Germans, and I'm talking all Germans, even people that just speak German, as they did in Czechoslovakia, as villains. Because what it does is it completely removes us from our humanity. It allows us to give them permission to continue to do inhumane things all around the world by pretending that this stuff is only done to people that are awful, people that are backwards, when in reality we're talking about innocent women and children. That's a Christian perspective to have. We murdered innocent Christians. That's what we did on Dresden. And it was not necessary to do it because it was not a town in which they were attacking for any military gain. In fact, in writings which were declassified, Winston Churchill communicating with people, he talked about it being the aim to terrorize them, to terrorize the Germans. Again, alternative facts that people don't like to hear because they want to become the authority.
Like other Allied leaders, Churchill said later that the bombing of Dresden, which resulted in 25,000 to 35,000 deaths in a single 3-day run, might have been a regrettable act of terror. He ultimately did not like that he had approved it, but he did not wear it like a badge of honor. He actively avoided the topic later in life. Regardless, Dresden was a major military hub, and while it's easy for me to sit here decades later in America and say this, I'm going to say it anyway. It was a major support hub for the Nazis, so fuck them. Candace goes on to detail the beef between Tucker and the Babylon Bee CEO, and it's bleh. Moving on, Candace treats us to some Catholic-flavored historical revisionism, along with selected reading from a Vanity Fair article that was honestly so good, I paid for a year-long membership.
Really?
It was only $12.
Huh.
Yeah. But here she is.
So, of course, one thing that is always permitted is attacking Christians. That's just across the board. They love it. Sebastian Gorga's like, Christ is king, her. And it's because what we also learn in the classroom is that Catholics are backwards, and that's actually one of the things that drew me into wanting to learn more about Catholicism. Like, the more that I learned that virtually everything I learned in the public school system was a lie, and I was intentionally learning things backwards, like the villains were actually the heroes, and the heroes were actually the villains, and I really saw this in terms of the Catholic faith. Like, we are lied about the Spanish Inquisition, and we are constantly sold this idea that Catholics were backwards, and thank goodness for the end of the medieval period, and thank goodness that finally we allowed intellectuals to get in there, and the Enlightenment and the Dark Ages was over. They were not the Dark Ages. They were an ages of remarkable Christian progress. And the more that I saw that, I obviously began to study with priests and to ask questions more about history, and it brought me to the Catholic faith. And I just loved this headline that I just wanted to show you guys very briefly here, in Vanity Fair. Check this out. They are just like, everything's going on in the world, and Vanity Fair is just like, oh, hold up, let me just attack you about Catholics because they're becoming popular for the first time ever, maybe. And this is a real headline: behind the Catholic Rights Celebrity Conversion Industrial Complex. The celebrity what? Industrial complex. Can Catholics have like 2 months of people talking about them? I don't understand. The entire ecosystem is built to talk trash about Catholics, and suddenly they're like, there's just been too many people. And from this article, it says, from Russell Brand to J.D. Vance to Candace Owens, what happens when the Catholic Church chases influencers and their legions of followers down the rabbit hole of the right? What are you talking about? They're acting like we all got a phone call or like we were coordinating somehow. There might just be the Holy Spirit moving right now. I've actually never met J.D. Vance. When I did meet Russell Brand, he was so far on the left. I mean, he said that he was going to bring a hammer and sickle to my wedding. You're acting like there's been some coordination between all of us, and like I'm picking up phone calls from Steve Bannon. He's like, hey, I've got the Pope on the line, and do you want to become a Catholic? This really is just, the world has become so evil, but also in this evil sphere, there has also been this reaction where people are pursuing spiritualism and they're pursuing truth. Like, in this world of lies, people are going, okay, what is one thing that has remained unshakable? And they're starting to turn to the church. And the more that you look into history, and the more that the scales fall from your eyes, and the more that you realize that you have been sold a bill of lies, the more I believe that you will land back at the Catholic faith. I genuinely believe that, because that's been my journey, but I think that's what we're witnessing. It's been so stunning that people believe that it's a conspiracy, and it's not. It's not a conspiracy at all. It goes on and it reads, as a live stream host with an audience of millions, Owens has built a career premised on outrage. Before 2016, she'd been one among many writers peddling women's interest hot takes, but when she left Right that year, after liberals criticized her plan to create a registry of online trolls, she found new support on the alt-right. Blah, 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 blah. They're basically trying to say that there's some Catholic gang, heavily implying that there's a Catholic gang that is circulating amongst the right. Let me tell you, if they had implied that about Jewish people, this whole Vanity Fair would have to announce that they were bankrupt tomorrow. No question about it. They could never say this. You could say it about Christians. You could never say this about Jews. It's always open season on Christians. God forbid you critique a Jewish person. God forbid you critique Israel. God forbid you talk about Bibi Netanyahu. And it's like, goodbye, get this person demonetized off a platform. But again, when it's Christian, people can say whatever the heck it is that they want.
Yeah, about that article. So the article, like I said, is pretty good. I recommend seeking it out, and I'll provide a link. The author did a really good job with it and covers a lot of bases and concerns that I had. Basically, the article throws shade on the crop of new Catholics like Candace Owens and J.D. Vance, and highlights how there is a schism of sorts going on in the Catholic Church as a semi-revolt against Pope Francis and the direction the Church has been taking since the 1960s. Moving on. Time for some Nick Fuentes. This is almost 8 minutes long. I wanted to cut it, but what goes on here needs to be heard as it is, I think. For those of you who are listening to this as part 1 of this week, the episode cut will come after this clip. As soon as I find it. There we go.
All right, guys, speaking of Catholics, I do want to, I have to say, my blood was boiling when I went on X and I saw a clip that was circulating of Nick Fuentes talking about me. And, he's been just on a tear for 2 weeks talking trash about me. I have no idea what has motivated this. I have obviously been dealing with a full onslaught of attacks everywhere from Australia, from the ADL. And in addition, Nick Fuentes has joined in on the chorus. And I genuinely am not sure what's motivating it, but I just want to show you what he said so I can respond to it, because I have such a strong opinion on stuff like this and I feel the need to say something. So let's take a listen to Nick Fuentes telling his audience that he red-pilled me. Take a listen.
I red-pilled Candace. She's been watching my show for years, let's just be honest. I've heard enough, and I know she's been watching my show for at least 4 years. I red-pilled her. I red-pilled a lot of these. And I don't want to take all the credit. Me, among others, red-pilled a lot of people. People like Sneeko, Jake Shields, Myron, Ye, whoever. And I'm not taking all the credit, but I and others, truth tellers, red-pilled people. Candace has a public and a private reason she doesn't want to talk to me or about me. And I said last week, I have evidence that both her public and private reason are bull. And I'm not indiscreet, so I'm not going to go and spill the beans on everything. And I said last week, if she wants to, she can. But that's not true either. And if I'm pushed and my credibility's on the line, well, I'll have to say it. I don't want to, because I'm not an indiscreet person. But, you can't just lie and lie. Well, I can't talk to him because YouTube. Well, that's BS. Well, I can't talk to him because this lawsuit. That's BS. Well, Nick knew there was a lawsuit. You're right, but I know other. So, don't play with me. I'll remind you. I'll remind you, girl, about our text. When she texted me during the Ye thing back in 22, she said, "Oh, I don't keep secrets. I don't believe. I'm going to expose everybody and blah blah." Well, Orange, you glad I'm not like you then, right? Because I kept that pretty quiet for a couple of years, just like I'm keeping this quiet. But don't play with me.
Yeah, so first and foremost, did not like that because that arrived to me as some sort of a threat, like he's got information on me or knows stuff behind the scenes. And so let me first and foremost say this. The idea that I have been red-pilled by Nick Fuentes, parking aside just the utter arrogance of that statement. I've been in politics for 8 years. There's not a single person that I would say, they owe me, I red-pilled them, I red-pilled this person. It's a complete nonsense. I never watched a single episode of Nick Fuentes' show until after he did, which I have said publicly, the public X space that was hosted by Lauren Chen, and it was the first time that I heard his story, and I thought to myself, wow, what happened to this when he was a kid was completely wrong, and I never knew what the backstory was, and I was quite interested by it. I have never said anything publicly about him, have not jumped in on everybody saying, you must disavow, you must say this, you must say that. And so to have somebody take my name to lie and pretend that I've been following you for 4 years, like you're the person who saved me from the left. You have nothing to do with my story. You have nothing to do with my background. And I don't know what purpose it serves to even say this. I have no idea why you would say something that is just so resoundingly untrue when it doesn't serve anything. There's nothing here. There's just no reason to do it. But parking all of that aside, to pretend that there is something you know about me, like I said this, I messaged him privately, you have my full and explicit permission to release whatever it is that you think you have on me. Like, there is nothing that needs to be private. Don't do that. Don't think that there's going to be some sort of a fear campaign or you're trying to, there's a little bit of a threat there. Don't make me have it. What are you talking about? You've literally been speaking to yourself on your show, and I've said nothing back to you. You're in a corner fighting yourself, picking fights with people that have done nothing to you. Okay, I don't need to have your perspectives. I'm sorry you don't like that I'm friends with Dave Smith. I'm sorry it doesn't seem possible to you that there could ever be a legitimate friendship between a Christian and a Jew, but there is one. I like Dave Smith. There's no funny backstory there either. I had him on my show not because I wanted him as a token, but because my producer was a huge fan of his on my old show and said, hey, have you ever heard of this guy, Dave Smith? And my answer was no, because I know this is going to blow your mind, but your audience is not the same as my audience. You don't make an appeal to suburban moms. I would assume the majority of your audience is male. I also don't even watch Andrew Tate's videos, and I'm friends with him. I don't watch his videos because his audience is male. It's just a different market of ideas. It's absurd to think that as a mother of 3, I go home and I'm watching all of this male content. And I think that's part of the reason is there's just such a gap here. It's a totally different thing when you've had 3 kids in 3 years and you have a household and the way that your brain works and what you do with your spare time when you have a show that's 5 days a week and when you're not, when you're in a situation like Nick Fuentes and you really believe that if someone reflects anything that you have said, the idea must have come from you. And again, like I said, I won't make any apologies or excuses or capitulate to this idea that I can't be friends with Dave Smith, who is actually just an awesome guy. He really is. Like, I met him because somebody pushed me to have him on my show, and then I had one of the best conversations that I ever had on my old show. And I thought, I really want to keep learning from this person. Do you think I've never had Jewish friends in the past, that I don't have friends from high school? And in your mind, it's warped to believe that the only way they can be friends is if they're using each other as tokens, and your idea here is that unless people agree with you, they're a fraud. And also, unless somebody has the same perspective as you, and also unless they speak to you, can you just explain this to me very slowly? What is the perspective here? Unless you fully agree with me, you're a fraud. And also, if you say any ideas that I say, they obviously must have come from me. So when I arrived at the conclusion that Me Too was fraudulent from day one and that BLM was fraudulent from day one, if I go on and I see that also the Tate brothers say that Me Too is fraudulent, then clearly they must have gotten it from me. They must have been watching my show for years. I created the Tate brothers. They got that from me. I created all these people. I once heard Dan Bilzerian say something. He got that from me. This is just not a game that I'm going to play, so I'm totally, completely fine, as I said, and I will say it publicly. You can put whatever you want to put up about me. I conduct myself in private as I conduct myself publicly. I give everyone a chance to be kind. I don't take a perspective about people from others, but this was complete crap, and you heavily implied that you had some dirt on me, and you have my full permission to release whatever dirt you think that it is, because there isn't any. There absolutely is not any. All right, guys, just going to remind you about Tax Network.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, she decided to end that one
with a plug. Throw to an ad.
What I hate is that knowing the few ads that she does have. I know you cut more of those out, but
yeah.
Still, knowing the ads that
She's
she
got
does
at least,
have.
I haven't done a count. She's got at least 8 to a dozen advertisers.
I feel like there's better ones that she could lead into off of the end of things. Like after finishing that full statement, there, she could have gone into the one for attorneys.
There's that, or Tax Network USA is kind of an attorney firm.
Yeah,
kind of.
But I'm not thinking.
I think she should have gone into the meat ad, because when she's sitting there and she's tearing apart with words, with tooth words, as it were.
Yeah.
The meat of young Nick Fuentes.
Yeah.
You're already in a carnivore state of mind if you're a fan. You're already in a rending flesh state of mind. I think throwing to Good Ranchers would have been the way to go. And if me saying all that got you hungry for justice, then let me tell you about Good Ranchers, my friends.
Okay, fair enough.
That's what I would have thought, but I don't think she really has production meetings.
She really should, because there's
You know,
and
like,
unfortunately, there's an untapped potential sitting right there.
I know.
Also, if she could talk more like she did when she did the Xavier Broussard one.
Yeah.
If she could talk more like that when she does her shows, she might actually seem semi-convincing in her bullshit.
Well, that's the thing, right? She's built an audience based on how she does shit.
Yeah.
She's built an audience on the Chihuahua yap. You know?
Yeah.
That's what she's built an audience on. So that's really her brand.
It's unfortunate, because...
you know, I don't think so. Like, I think if she were more polished, she would have less of an audience, because people see her as being a real one because of how she does shit.
Yeah.
And that's the entire way I think that she got hired onto the Daily Wire, because Ben Shapiro famously does that.
Okay. But that's...
You know, he doesn't dazzle with brilliance. He baffles with bullshit.
Which...
You know. I mean, Trump in his own way does it. He just stumbles around words.
Yeah.
Whereas
more so these days than ever.
You know, whereas these cats are more direct. They're more direct, but also they pack in more bullshit. You know, that's why people think they're smart. They're not smart. They're not even that fucking fearsome. You know, because you can just look at them like, I mean, kind of like how Kamala did in the debate. Like, just looked at Donald and was like, no, okay. So, you know, don't even engage with it. Just be like, no, that's all lies. Mm-hmm. Fuck you, that's lies. You can't prove it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't prove it, but I know a few of those things, and we could talk more on them. But yeah, it's like, come on. You know, so I don't check in with Nick Fuentes at all. But he must have been talking mad shit for a while.
Yeah.
I have noted on this show a few times how Candace has dodged doing shows with him, interviews and so on, but she never threw him under the bus, which is the best he could have hoped for with her. But he has been very vocal about his support of her on his show, and regarding others, apparently. I don't care much for when she has beef with someone, but he is prominent enough and connected enough that this could be something very stupid and dangerous to watch unfold. Fuentes is the type that is typically full of shit, and I think that this whole thing, if he pursues it, could blow up in his face. Mostly because Candace has what he doesn't, which is charisma and an audience that isn't entirely based on male identity politics. Candace gets into viewer comments next, and there is something different about them. For one thing, Nick Fuentes does have a channel on Rumble, but also Rumble does have a type of super chat feature called Rumble Chat that creators doing live streams can cash in on. Creators keep 60% of the revenue, but Rumble has a much lower user base, and it isn't clear right now if Candace is only engaging with people using the tip feature to highlight their statements. I don't usually fuck with the viewer comments on this show, but here is some of it.
Okay, now we can get into some of your comments. Obviously, a lot of people are inundating right now with back and forth about Nick and asking about whether or not he and I are going to sit down, and people saying debate him. And that's another thing that I will add. In a correspondence that I had with Nick, he could have just reached out to me and said, hey, I'd like to do something on your show. There's something about this that is just so remarkably childish, and I'm not going to touch on it again. I just wanted to touch on it today because I felt that there was a very heavy implication, like he had some sort of a threat or a blackmail on me, and I'm just not into it. And to people who follow him, I don't have an issue with that. He can be your king, and you can support him until you want to. That's not something that I would ever discourage people from doing, but I am going to defend myself when I feel like I'm being thrown into a situation that really has just been Nick fighting himself for the last 3 weeks. Regarding any, I don't know, I guess I can't read comments on the YouTube page. If this person is saying boo to, I can't know because it's going way too fast here. I'm just going to go here because they're pulling comments live. Okay, here we go. I'm going to read you guys who are I don't know if you call them super chats on Rumble, forgive me. This person says, truth is a luxury. This person says, Candace, serious question. Can you please explain why everything is fake and gay? I don't know. I think it's partially because we are living in a matrix of sorts, and it feels cheesy to call it a matrix, but in reality, it just is one. Like, we've been kind of so distracted by materialism, and I think part of it is that we're just awakening to it, like our intuition, our gut instinct. We see it as performative now, whereas before we thought it was real. So when people are pretending to be outraged and saying, like, this person is a Hitler apologist, I feel as though maybe 6 years ago that would have been so heavy. But now it's just so overdone that we're just going, this is so fake. It's so obviously fake and performative that we just wonder, is there anything that's actually authentic? Daniel writes, hey, Candace, do you think the penny might have dropped with Trump on Babbitt, with him saying that no one died on January 6th? And should she be charged with treason for participating in deep state's pantomime? I actually did not see Trump speaking about January 6th. I am not sure exactly what you're speaking about. To be honest with you, I didn't follow that interview.
That's from the debate.
Mom Approved writes, I recommended your show to all my mom friends. Can we get a cup with the phrase fake and gay? I do need to drop some fake and gay merch. Everyone's really loving that. It's got to have like a 90s vibe, and we'll say fake and gay. And I'm glad that we're saying gay again, because obviously we were saying that in the 90s, not towards homosexuals, just against things that are actually feeling like they're fake and gay.
I just thought about something.
Yeah, go ahead.
That'll backfire so hard, especially if she puts them in a rainbow theme. The reason why is because, do you know how I know a lot of gay folks, and even that's following the broad spectrumed term of all the way through the rainbow. The amount of them that will buy either A, anything with rainbow to it, or B, anything that seems like it'd be a funny way of being like, oh yeah, I'm faking gay because I'm trans, that sort of thing. Like, well, it's one of those things that I feel like would backfire really hard.
Well, this is something that I just thought of, and I didn't think of it till you were talking just now, but the sheer amount of anti-gay crusader bullshit she has been on, particularly with companies like Target, having their Pride Month displays. The sheer amount of angry bullshit she has done regarding those, and then she wants to come up with merch that's 90s themed. That I have thoughts on. Maybe things were different where she grew up. But in the 90s, the word gay was a slur so much that gay people started using it as a badge of honor, for fuck's sakes. At least in my area. I'm sure they had already done that in San Francisco and other, classically gay-friendly areas. But where I lived in rural Florida, the gay kids started using that as a badge of honor. Gay and proud became fighting words. Yeah. They would yell those words before attacking bigots physically. The gay kids were the fiercest fighters because they had to be. And because I was in a very combat heavy martial art, and I had no problems with teaching people how to fight early on. I had a gay uncle that I just was enamored with, and because he was an awesome dude. But him and his community, for lack of a better word. I don't want to say all of his ex-boyfriends, but I did meet several guys that he had dated. And they were all great. So, and none of them, not a single one would ever mess with a kid. I was 10, 11, 12 years old when we would go visit, and I'd hang out with these guys, and, they taught me how to cook various things that no one I knew how to cook. So I got a lot of great instruction with them, hung out with them at the beach. They weren't all up on each other all the time, they were just cool dudes. And and none of them were even particularly effeminate either. It was just whatever, but they because I had positive experiences with gay folks when I was involved in Kung Fu, in Wing Chun, and I was teaching people. I had we had, because our school was in Riverside, which is like the gay hub of Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Even today. You know, of course, like, it was just like the general population. Like, I think 1 out of every 10, maybe 2 out of every 10 guys in our group were outwardly gay. And no one gave them shit for it. We all hung out together. You know, like, we all would go get pizza or whatever the fuck after class. You know, like, no one gave a shit. Well, those guys, I can tell you, just from, like, I wasn't able to hang out with them all the time, but my friends who were older in the schools were like, yeah, like, we have to watch out for them. Mm-hmm. Like, why is that? Well, because they don't care that people know that they're gay, so bigots will push up on them, and they also don't have a problem with starting a fight. So we have to be like their muscle. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, he's so nice. Yeah, because you're one of us. You know? Like, because you're one of us and you're not a little shit talker. You know, like, you don't care, so you don't see it. But, like, trust us, if you ever are out with the group, just be ready. Just be ready for the bar fight. Like, really? Like, yeah, like, okay. You know, I mean, I'm a kid with hanging out around all these guys, so, like, I didn't get to go do the parties and stuff until I was much older, but, yeah, they weren't kidding. Yeah, we had this thing in Riverside, at Club 5, which is now, like, a theater again, but back in the day it was a rock club.
Okay.
And, yeah, I mean, you have your typical, like, dance nights and stuff. Well, they started doing Friday night fights, where they would turn the center of the club into a fucking boxing ring. And, you know, you've got people that are already mostly drunk.
Yeah.
And so what would happen was you'd get, like, amateur fighters up in there who would just, you know, sign up to fight against anybody.
Yeah.
Or you'd have guys that had grudge matches.
Ah.
Well, what would happen is sometimes these very cool gay guys would get just a couple drinks in them, and some flannel-wearing bigot would be, like, just calling them names. They'd be like, you know, honey, if you want to show your friends how much of a man you are, we can take this into the ring. And I'm thinking, I know this guy is a black belt in a street-friendly martial art. I know he's going to wipe the floor with this guy because he's a challenge for me, and I'm teaching him shit. This isn't going to go well for Redneck. You know, and yeah, no, sure enough, they get in there, and we were all brothers in the school, so, you know, our gay brothers would, like, you'd see them get twitchy.
Yeah. Because
it's like, we might have to fight our ways out of here, you know? Because when that redneck goes down, his friends might not like it, and I'd be like, all right, okay. Should I, like, put on my gloves? Like, I've got my fighter gloves in my pocket right now. Should I put them on? I don't want to damage my hands. I wait tables. I kind of need these things to stay pretty. And they'd be like, if you feel more comfortable. Fuck, okay. All right. You know, and I'd slip my my padded knuckle dusters on and just wait. Fortunately, we never got into a brawl. But yeah, these guys would just like dance, sometimes literally dance around the rednecks and just like pop them in the face. Just daring them to pick them off. Just daring them to swing big. And, you know, you get a couple rounds in like that, and like the guys just, I didn't see anybody get knocked out because like they just made it so, it was clear that the rednecks were typically out of their league. And them being like drunk, they just swing wild. And you got a skilled guy who's had a couple of drinks in him, so he's loose. Yeah. You know? And yeah, it was almost never a good scene for the other guys. Like, we never had to brawl our way out of there, but I'd heard enough stories that they did have to do it that I was just expecting it. And yeah, no, fortunately, you know, I don't have any bar fight stories like that. But oh my God, it was always tense.
I just picture anybody that works at those clubs that knows people, just, you know, having the Friday night fight and just seeing one walk in and then watch a redneck walk in and just go, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Please, Luis, I will give you free drinks. Do not do it tonight, please, for the love of God.
Well, the funny thing is too is that because our school was in Riverside.
Oh God. Yeah.
Like our school was in Riverside, and we had a local reputation. So these rednecks come in from like Middleburg and like the north side of Jacksonville, these hick towns. They didn't know. They didn't know that our most extreme people were tattooed. I almost got a tattoo.
Yeah.
They didn't know the tattoos to look out for. Like we were effectively a gang.
Yeah.
You know, and they didn't know, and it was sometimes funny when they would learn. Like one of the bouncers, like you said, one of the bouncers pulled one guy aside one day because, like he'd gone back to his little group, and like the bouncer came over and explained to us what was happening. He stopped a brawl from occurring. He walked back over to the group and he was like, "Okay, guys. So I know you had your little grudge match, and you know the judgment went against you. Damn right." And I saw the bouncer just put his hand calmly over the guy's mouth and talk into his ear. And like I saw the guy's eyes go wide, and the bouncer comes over to us a few minutes later and tells us, "Yeah, look, I just told him that everyone standing around you is a better fighter than you." Like talking to the guy who just got out of the grudge match, and he's like, "Well, you know, honey, you're not wrong. Like, these guys have been doing it longer than me, so yeah." He's like, "Yeah, I just told him that, and his friends were like, we don't need to fuck with them. We need to leave now. We can drink literally anywhere else. There's 50 bars in this downtown. We don't need to fuck with them. We don't need to roll like this. I got to go to work on Monday." Yeah. And so, like, we saw them leave, and we're like, "Okay, you know, thanks." He's like, I understand why you guys get in the ring with these assholes. Please don't. Please give us a couple weeks off, okay?" And we're like, all right. You know, and so, like, then a couple of them started buying houses, so we would just go to their houses and have parties, which was much better.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you don't have a redneck hick spewing slurs at you, I'm sure it makes the tequila go down a lot better.
It does, yeah. I passed out on their couch a few times. Yeah. You know, like I said, though, gay people, men and women, had a really tough time for a long time, even in areas that were seen as gay-friendly. If you were a gay kid, a minor in the 90s, and your parents were not very, very cool, you had to suffer or risk losing your entire life, and possibly in a literal sense. Shit was bad, and use of the word gay as a casual slur was only common in my experience among assholes. And I include myself in that. I blame my own past actions on where I grew up or the cult that I was raised in, but I'm glad that I at least never knowingly harmed anyone. You know, that said, like I said, I grew up rural, I grew up in a cult, and I was in this kung fu school as a minor, and that's when I really got to, like, know these people, you know, as human beings, and that was also around the time that, like, I was hanging out with my uncle and stuff, so, you know, I don't like that I knowingly engaged in that sometimes just to get by in life, but I'm glad that I developed a good enough fighting skill at a young age that I didn't feel like I had to keep pretending.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, and I'm always glad for the positive gay people that I knew growing up, gay, lesbian, whatever, you know, growing up, that they were definitely a force for good in my life, particularly when, like, you know, the people who I knew that were part of a religion that had supposedly one of the most loving, awesome people as its central figure, how these people were so hateful to people that didn't even think about them. And if they did, they didn't hate them back, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's probably one of the funniest things that I have seen here.
Yeah.
Is, like, my one old manager at the retail job, he was, like, he was flamboyantly out there
Yeah.
gay.
Yeah.
And it was actually kind of a funny moment. I had like some white redneck come up
Yeah.
and he looked at me and he like squinted at me, and you know how we have the
Yeah.
obvious Jewish features.
Yeah.
And he's like, I need to talk to a manager. And I go, okay. And so I called over
Yeah.
the floor supervisor, who happened to be the black guy. And he looked at him and looked back at me and he's like, is there another manager? So I called over the other floor supervisor, which was my black friend.
Yeah.
And he's like, is there another one? And so I was like, let me try the guy above the rest of us.
Yeah.
So I gave him a call. He comes down in his flamboyant
Yeah.
assness. Because I was like, there's a not so kind gentleman down here that
Yeah.
wants to see you. And I whispered into the phone, I think he's a hick. And then hung up.
Yeah.
And so he came down. And dude was so disgruntled that he was just like, he had two black guys behind him.
Yeah.
And a Jew and a gay next, and like standing in front of him. That he was just standing there with a pack of ribs.
Oh, jeez.
That he wanted returned. And he was like, yo, can I get these returned? And he's like, sure thing. Matthew here can help you.
Yeah.
And then he went upstairs to his office, and the other two just stayed there, and we just casually talked back and forth, making
Yeah.
this guy as uncomfortable as possible. And then the guy left, and the two that were on the floor were like, okay, so what was all that about?
Yeah.
I was like, redneck hick. I don't know what his problem with me was, but he didn't like you two, and he certainly didn't like Justin.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there and he's like, why in the hell? It's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just a pack of ribs. I don't know what his problem is. Like, it wasn't even like a BOGO deal or
Yeah.
a sale or nothing. It was just a pack of ribs that didn't smell right.
Yeah.
And it's like, he couldn't just tell that to me.
Yeah. God. Some of these people. But, like I said, there's no reason to celebrate the time when the word gay was a fucking slur.
No.
That's preposterous. Candace goes on to say that her anti-vax series, A Shot in the Dark, is going to be on local soon, and she may eventually put it on Rumble. And then she reads several minutes of comments from people happy that she's on Rumble full-time now. Whether or not she remains to be seen at the time of this writing, which was much earlier in the week, I think if she can't make money on YouTube, then she's probably done there. Candace starts the next day off with some debate bullshit. And before I get into that, let me say that I want to say her episodes listed from number 56 to 60 are all gone off of YouTube. Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Like, they did a hard wipe.
They did a hard wipe. But here's the thing. She's still on YouTube. You can subscribe to her, but she hasn't made any new content on there.
And she can't make any money off of it either.
Well, no, here's what's fucked, okay?
Yeah.
Think about this, all right? She can't make any money from the YouTube views, nor from advertising.
Yeah.
Right? So, and YouTube can still run ads. You put videos up, they can still run ads. You just, as a demonetized entity, don't make any money off of that. So what that means is that particular stream of income is gone. Now, I mentioned it later in the script here, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now.
Mm-hmm.
So, she doesn't have these many possible millions of views, right? I didn't look at the view counts on her channel. That didn't really apply to me at the time. Or that didn't really interest me at the time, rather. So, I didn't look at the actual view counts. I know that she has 2.4 million followers. Now, on her Rumble channel, she's got about 145,000 followers.
Yeah.
I don't know the views on there either. But let's say, she had let's say she had 100,000, maybe more than that, on her videos on YouTube. She's willing to lose that stream of money to not do her ad reads. She's got to be getting paid for these ad reads.
Yeah.
Now, isn't it easier, don't you think? I think it's easier to sell ads when you can tell people, yeah, and I've got this verified audience of up to 2.4 million people watching my videos any given day.
Yeah.
Isn't it easier to sell your advertisers that, plus your Rumble, plus your podcast numbers,
Yeah.
plus your Twitter numbers? Now, you take that YouTube slice away. Why? Why would they pay you as much?
Yeah.
If you are knowingly not doing a thing just because you're not getting paid for your view counts on YouTube. That is dumb.
On a whole nother level.
Yeah, considering that all she has to do is record the content on Rumble and put it up on YouTube. As long as it's an MP4, she can upload it to all kinds of sources.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. So, I have to kind of assume at this point that when she agreed to do ad reads for these entities, it wasn't with YouTube in mind.
Yeah.
I think she had a point. I think, and this is just supposition. Mm-hmm. I can't say this for sure, of course, but it seems to me like you go to your advertisers and you go, my particular content is probably not going to be on YouTube for very long. So, just so you know that going in. Now, I don't know how her people work on that. I don't know anything about that, but it seems to me like that's something you would present as a probability from day one.
Yeah, like what I did for that one corporate job of, because they had asked me, what is your plan with this company? And I was like, honestly, I do hope that if you do accept me, I can move up the corporate ladder, over the years as it goes. That's kind of my plan.
Yeah.
But also, just to let you know, if this falls through, I have another job already, set up and lined up to go.
Yeah.
And I realized after I said that, I was like, was that maybe being a little too forward? Look,
it's a little too honest. Yeah.
If y'all don't take me, I don't fucking need this. Right. I have another good paying gig waiting.
Yeah, it's not going to break my heart. But yeah, so...
I feel like that is along the lines of, what you bring to somebody like that is...
Yeah.
Yeah, look, we want to read ads for you, but just so you know, this extra figure here might not exist much longer.
Yeah. I could get demonetized any day, which means I'm not going to be doing content there. Yeah. There's no telling, but...
Even if you frame it as, an anti-Christian slight, I guess.
Yeah. So, here we go with the episode 62 cold open.
All right, guys, happy Wednesday. I know that I cannot be the only woman in the world who felt the need to apologize to my husband following the debate last night. I mean, that's about how much whining went on. I could not stand. It literally became insufferable listening to the sound of Kamala's voice. It was just so much whining and nagging. Truly, I just felt bad for her husband, and I felt bad for all husbands, and I felt like I had to apologize. No worries. I've got your recap today. We're going to go through everything that I thought that was extremely relevant that happened, and I'm going to deliver my final verdict on who was the winner and who was the loser. And I think my answer is going to surprise you. Plus, are you guys following this debacle with her earrings? Kamala's earrings, were they actually devices? Was somebody feeding her answers? This is a question that only a woman can investigate and get to the bottom of, and I'm happy to be that woman. Lastly, we have to address the elephant in the room, or better stated, the cat in the room. Ms. Taylor Swift, she has just come out, and it is really shocking that she has decided to endorse Kamala Harris. All that coming up on Candace.
Yeah, so that starts the episode off well. Candace's take on the debate is fairly predictable, but covering her work is what we do, so we're starting with this right after the theme song. Boop.
All right, so going into the debate, I guess we all sort of knew what was going to happen. I don't even know why we watch these things. It's just exciting, I suppose. You expect there's going to be a little bit of theater, but it really kind of all is political theater, and we know exactly what we're getting into. We knew that Kamala was going to hit hard on the topic of abortion. It feels so differently to me. I know there are tons of women who follow me, and not all of them are necessarily pro-life, but I have to believe that you feel a bit stirred when you hear someone that is close to tears speaking about abortion and talking about it as if it's just a right. Like, I just need to be able to abort my child. Like, suddenly when I see that stuff, and it could definitively be because I've been leaning so much more into my faith, it just sounds so demonic. Like, we are speaking about children. And I just feel like our every instinct as women should be to defend children. And I think a large piece of this is that a lot of these women that are crying and demanding these sorts of things don't have children, so it makes it a little bit easier. And I guess I have 3 young children, and it's just unimaginable to me. And it's just such a difference from when I was in college, and I agreed with those perspectives. But anyways, we knew that was what Kamala was going to do, because that's what her base loves. They love the non-stop appeal to emotion. You saw this throughout the entire night. Kamala would just make everything a personal, emotional story. I was standing here on January 6th, and let me tell you what I saw. And I was here when this happened to me. And we can mock it all we want as conservatives, but like I said, she knows her demographic, and she is dealing with a demographic that is largely emotional and not very rational. Like I said, these are the only kinds of people that would flood the streets and be brought to tears by the concept of aborting a child. You're talking about either a young audience, or if you're talking about a woman who's way older, like I said, it's usually there's a prototype for that. You're talking about the kinds of celebrities that gave up having a family, someone like Chelsea Handler, because they wanted to pursue their career. But anyways, I know that people are speaking a lot about the moderators. Conservatives are so angry about the moderators. I am not upset one bit about the moderators. Not because they were fair, but because they were to be expected. This has been the game since 2015. He can't even get a fair interview. I saw Megyn Kelly was going on a tear about that this morning, and I just was like, how old am I? Am I old enough to remember when Megyn Kelly was sort of one of these unfair people that was giving Donald Trump an interview in 2015? Now, granted, she's not a moderator, and who knows if she would have perhaps been better in a debate, but if...
Yeah, Megyn Kelly has actually moderated 2 Republican presidential debates. One in 2015 and the other in 2023. The one in 2023 didn't have Trump present, as he was dealing with having to be out in court out of state at the time. Considering that at least 3 people Candace knows were at that one, I assumed she would have seen it. I'm talking about Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, and Nikki Haley. All of them are terrible humans, and Candace wanted at least one of them to be the VP pick. Anyway,
you've been on the Trump train for a while, this is just what we've come to expect. So Trump knows going in there that it's going to be a 3-on-1 debate. He knows that ABC is going to try to assist Kamala in any way that they can. And it was very clear that she got all the questions ahead of time and she had prepared her answers. And I was also very much expecting Kamala to be prepared in her answers. Like, we're not dealing with Biden anymore. That's, by the way, why they had to get rid of Biden altogether. They had to get rid of Biden because he was dead. He couldn't even do the thing where he could perform, right? He couldn't just be an actor. They just need a Zelensky. They just need a Justin Trudeau. They just need a theater kid, somebody who grew up in theater, can memorize the lines and deliver them convincingly to an emotional audience, right? That's what's happening right now all across the world. We have a bunch of drama kids who have assumed office, and their job is to put on the next play in front of an audience that's going to be moved to tears watching them play Macbeth and Hamlet and go, oh my God, this is so real. I feel like I'm actually experiencing this emotion.
Yeah, so anyone that gets into this field has some public speaking experience, including Trump, who was an actor prior to his role on The Apprentice. Harris was a prosecutor for several years, then was a senator, as well as other work. She knows how to prep for a debate and the general tone of the questions that would be asked, are pretty much standard by this point. Candace just seems jealous, and part of me wonders if she wasn't able to be cast in shit back in high school. I mean, who can say?
Yeah.
And she did that, by the way. Kudos to Kamala. She did that. She remembered her lines. She delivered her lines with the exact inflection that they wanted her to. And like I said, she was assisted by David Muir and Lindsay Davis, who were the moderators. And it turns out that they fact-checked Donald Trump 5 times while he was speaking. 0 times for Kamala, 5 times for Donald Trump. Take a listen.
And you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
say
manager.
the dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond.
Crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
Yeah, so Trump getting fact-checked was pleasant to hear, honestly. We listened to about half of the debate live, and Trump definitely deserved that shit. Harris wasn't fact-checked because she wasn't lying. She said her own opinions and didn't misquote basic facts. She did dodge some questions, but she did it with enough skill that Trump wasn't jumping all over it. Here's some more bullshit.
You gotta love that man. Really, Kamala could have just sat there and said nothing, and the moderators would have handled it for her. David Muir, what a piece of work. We spoke to the city manager, and they say there's no evidence of that. That's always how you know that what they're telling you is absolute BS. When they say there's no evidence of that. What do you mean there's no evidence of that? There's no evidence they ate the animal. Well, they ate it. So I don't know how you would have the evidence. He says he had a cat, he had a dog, and they ate it, and then they're just like, well, no, we don't. There's no evidence of that. It's in his belly. I mean, what is it? Somebody has all reported this publicly. He said that this took place, and the city manager is taking the stance that they don't have evidence of it. This kind of so reminds me of the exact same language that they give us about COVID, and well, there's no evidence, which means that we're not looking for the evidence. That's exactly what there is no evidence. It means we, the establishment, are not looking for the evidence, because there is a certain narrative that we are trying to sell, and it would not be helpful right now for us to learn that there are migrants that are eating people's pets. That's just not something that people want to accept at this moment, least of all ahead of an election where we know exactly which party is the party of open borders. And then, of course, like I said, they didn't fact check.
So this really makes me angry, because this lie is causing utter chaos in Springfield, Ohio, and anywhere close to it right now, because talking heads and right-wing and alt-right media are repeating this shit. It isn't true at all. But because groups like the Proud Boys are descending on this town and people are calling in bomb threats, schools, hospitals, and other things are being shut down. Haitians that were going to work are now afraid to leave their homes, and people all over are fucking terrified because these assholes outnumber the police and they are armed.
Kamala at all. And she told so many lies that have been debunked over and over again, even by the left. Like when she arrived at the Charlottesville hoax, I don't know how long they can just keep doing this. The very fine people. Trump said the neo-Nazis were very fine people. It's been debunked left and right. That is a hoax. Nobody fact-checked her on that. They were like, oh, we're just going to kind of let that one go. She also lied and said that she never wanted to ban fracking. There's a clip circulating on the internet right now of her explicitly stating that she wanted to ban fracking when she was being interviewed as the then vice presidential candidate. So she just changes her mind and nobody calls her out on it. But my favorite was when she lied, claiming that there were no Democrats, and you can see Lindsay trying to assist her there when she's like, right now, nowhere in the union can you abort a baby at 9 months. Yeah, that's not what he's saying. He's saying the Democrats want to pass laws allowing people to abort babies up to 9 months in the womb. That is an absolute fact.
Not a fact. But from the top, Trump did say that there were fine people on both sides of the rally in Charlottesville, and even though he condemned the neo-Nazis, they were the fucking people that organized the rally where Heather Heyer was killed. So, moving on there, Harris has changed her position on fracking over time, and I think part of it may be due to how much money there is still in the states that do it, regardless of how environmentally poisonous it is. It is a huge revenue source, and no one's going to stop doing it anytime soon. Lastly, no Democrat is trying to get abortions in that kind of late-term stage. No one. This has been a lie for a long time. Everyone seems to agree on a general maximum cutoff, unless a mother's life is in danger, which was the norm until the Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade decision. Fucking garbage. Anyway, that won't stop Candace from getting shit wrong on purpose.
And so they lied to try to cover that fact, because that's a scary thing, because you realize, again, whether or not you're pro-choice, how overboard that is. Even a person that is pro-choice would say, hey, we shouldn't be allowing people to choose abortion at 9 months in the womb. Who's arguing for that? And I can tell you who's arguing for that. There was an entire Democratic committee put together where the delegates made an argument, particularly Kathy Tran. They put together a bill arguing for that bill to get passed because they needed third trimester abortions. And then it was backed up by then Governor Ralph Northam, who spoke at length about why they should allow this and what they would do in those circumstances. Take a listen to this old clip.
No exception. There was a very contentious committee hearing yesterday when Fairfax County Delegate Kathy Tran made her case for lifting restrictions on third trimester abortions, as well as other restrictions now in place. And she was pressed by a Republican delegate about whether her bill would permit an abortion even as a woman is essentially dilating, ready to give birth. And she answered that it would permit an abortion at that stage of labor. Do you support her measure, and explain her answer?
Yeah, I wasn't there, Julie, and I certainly can't speak for Delegate Tran, but I would tell you, first thing I would say, this is why decisions such as this should be made by providers, physicians, and the mothers and fathers that are involved. There are, when we talk about third trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion.
So all of this happened in 2019. Candace is, of course, a hypocrite, but continuing this set of lies this long is low even for her. So the truth of the matter is that had she bothered to ever read the bill, that bill would have allowed, in Virginia only, because that is where Kathy Tran has served, as a Virginia legislator, it would have eased the requirements for a third trimester abortion in extreme cases only, which is allowed by law there. In those cases, the abortion is carried through under review and sign-offs by 3 doctors and the parents, and is only sought in cases where the life of the mother may be endangered or the child has severe abnormalities. An otherwise healthy birth would not be considered. The bill itself aimed to lower the number of doctors required to 1. And it would have removed the language that the abortion would have to be performed if not doing so would risk the mother's mental or physical health. It should be noted that Governor Northam was himself a pediatric neurologist prior to entering politics. So he had probably seen these types of cases before. No one was talking about doing this to healthy births. It was only to be exercised in extreme and tragic cases, and only in Virginia. This bill died in committee in 2019. It was aborted, if you will. It should be noted that the clip all of these lazy dicks like to play where Candace spoke well of Hitler was from 2018. So yes, she and her crew are just as lazy as their laziest critics. Moving on.
The lie that Kamala has told that has been the biggest and that I have truly wanted clarity on. Because I just think it is so compelling. It is just such a fundamental lie. Is that she's black. Okay? And it matters. This really, really deeply matters to me, because if you are talking about someone who will assume a different race to get votes, a woman who her entire political career identified as an Indian American, a woman who was proud of her Indian heritage, who spoke about her Indian heritage, who on both sides of her family, she has an Indian parent. I just want to be very clear, guys. Before, I thought her dad might have been partially black. No, her dad is Indian, but lived in Jamaica.
No, and no. This is a huge fucking lie. Harris's father is Jamaican, of African descent. Her mother is Indian. Harris's father family goes back generations in America. The only place I have seen this kind of rhetoric about Harris is on alt-right blogs and Reddit groups I lurk in with a sock puppet account. Her last name is his last name, and Donald Harris did as much as he could to help his daughters be proud of their Jamaican heritage and roots, just as their mother did with Indian culture in her home. Donald Harris is Jamaican. Fucking hell. So before I play the next clip, which is Candace doubling down on the race shit that she is very wrong about, her audio is going to get echoey. It's between clips of her playing Trump and Harris. I'm including this to show that she is willing to be very wrong with zero work involved and is full-throated supporting Trump with her Gish Gallop nonsense.
He's a Jamaican Indian, okay? He's not black. He is Indian. Her mother is Indian. And this woman then suddenly started saying Kendrick Lamar. She starts quoting hip-hop songs. She's saying they ain't like us and this and that. And she's on the BET Awards simply because she wants to mine black votes. That is wild. I mean, this should be like wall-to-wall coverage. Where are you at, Black America? How are you not completely upset that someone is essentially putting on your race like Rachel Dolezal because she thinks you're dumb enough that if she pretends to listen to hip-hop music, you'll give her your vote? And that moment arrived for her to clarify what her actual race was. And let's watch that moment.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I don't
asking.
know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts?
Just to pause. That is the reality. That's the reality. Why does he not have a right to ask that question? It's a little strange for someone to just become a different race. I don't know. Could she just clarify? Like, he read somewhere where she was black, and he read somewhere suddenly where she wasn't black, and then suddenly she appeared on the scene trying to get some votes, and black. Like he says, black. Suddenly she's black. I don't care. I just want to know. Whatever she wants to be, she can be. I guess you can pick your gender. I guess you can pick your race. But this is weird. Okay, this shows you that she is desperate to win and will say and do anything if she thinks that she can get away with it, and that's why it matters. And here is her non-answer that she gives. Take a listen.
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Okay, sweetie, what you're doing is worse because you're attempting to flip your race so that you can unite a bunch of American people behind you. That's like so much worse. And you're pretending, and of course she doesn't answer the question because she got caught lying and she just wants to get away with this. She's just going, oh no, he's racist for even asking the question. She's not going to answer it because she got caught, quite literally caught lying. This woman is not black. I want to be very clear. She is not black, okay? It's fine. Just like Trump says, it's fine. I don't care if she's black. I don't care if she's not black. She can do whatever she wants to be, but we should at least be critical of the fact that she actually did this and that she, instead of owning it or apologizing for it, she's doing the old DC dip and twirl. You guys remember that? Telling you about this from a Will Ferrell movie. Take a look.
Yeah, I expect Candace to never let up on this lie. The fact is, Trump is a racist asshole. Just because he isn't trying to string people up doesn't make him less racist. It makes him less violent, kinda. For now, anyway. I'm not going to play the clip Candace uses from a Will Ferrell movie because it's immaterial. Moving on. Candace claims with some editing that Harris was trying to emulate MLK Jr. when she was speaking. I'm not going to play her edited garbage. She goes on to say that this works well with Harris voters, and then she plays a section where Trump threatened a Taliban leader, or so he claims. Anyway, Candace's opinion is...
I say after that debate, there was absolutely no change. There were no winners and there were no losers because she gave her demographic exactly what they wanted. Emotion, raw emotion, and sounding a bit like MLK Jr. despite the fact that nothing she was saying was true. And Donald Trump gave his audience and his demographic exactly what they wanted, which was somebody that was going to be tough, someone that's going to speak about the economy, and someone that was not going to give in or be swayed by the emotion of Kamala Harris and her supporters. And so, like I said, absolutely no change. Honestly, in my view, I think Abdul won. So we're going to have to see what happens in November. I saw that there were some people, Piers Morgan saying Kamala won, Elon Musk saying no one won, other people saying Donald Trump won. And it just really just goes to underscore how divided we are as a nation. And everybody sees exactly what it is that they want to see going into that debate. And that's unfortunate, but I can say the biggest losers in all of this is always going to be America because, like I said, we have just become one big political show. And that's all I'm going to say on that topic. All right, guys, I want to remind you guys about Good Ranchers. You know I absolutely love Good Ranchers. And
Now you lead in with Good Ranchers? Yeah. Now would be a time to lead in with the taxes one. God.
Yeah.
The gold one.
Yeah, gold go.
Yeah, because, the country's divided and gonna fall apart, so
you better go buy gold, yeah.
Yeah, God.
Better buy gold and get some matching silver or whatever the fuck.
As much as I hate to say it, I'd say that Alex Jones is at least better about his plugs, isn't he?
He is, yeah. He's a master at them. Like, his plug reads are so, well done a lot of the time that it's a whiplash effect. Like, you don't see it coming. He's been doing it for a lot longer, though, so...
True.
So, yeah, no surprise there. The third name she mentioned was the supposed Taliban leader that Trump says he threatened during his term. So, whatever. After the Good Ranchers ad, we get something slightly different and surprising. Worth hearing, no pun intended.
all right, let's get into some stories. We've got some stuff going on. So there are all these headlines about a conspiracy that is circulating. I don't know if you missed it. I'm going to take you through it as only a woman could, okay? Kamala Harris and her earrings. That is what is at the center of this scandal. I'll show you her wearing these earrings right now, and it caused a bit of a stir online with people saying that her earrings had Bluetooth capability, okay? And like I said, I feel like I'm the right person to investigate this because, well, I mean, there are a flurry of users on the internet who are convinced that they are, in fact, and Bluetooth capable, and because it's a pair of earrings, only a woman would know whether or not there was any truth to that because there are just certain things that women know. And this kind of reminds me of like a Legally Blonde investigation. I'll jog your memory.
The gun is missing. The coroner said he'd been dead 30 minutes when the cops arrived, giving Brooke plenty of time to stash it.
I just don't think Brooke could have done this. Exorcist gives you endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people just don't shoot their husbands.
That is pretty sound female logic. I'm going to have to agree with her there. So I was like, I want to get into this debate about what is going on with her earrings. I know the media is dismissing it and calling it a conspiracy. Maybe there's something there. So here's what actually happened. There is, in fact, a pair of pearl earrings that were made by a company known as Nova. So if you're wondering what are Nova earrings, they look like a pair of unassuming earrings, but they're actually H1 audio earrings. And it's closer to a hands-free Bluetooth earpiece that's meant to look nice. They were created by this German startup that's called Nova Products. And I'm going to show you right now this side-by-side of Kamala's earrings next to the Nova earrings. You see there's a strong similarity here, right? There's no question. You're like, okay, what's actually going on here? What's going on with this earring? It looks to me, my lady eyes, that she's wearing these pearl clip-ons of some description, right? And so the first thing I asked myself was, does Kamala Harris normally wear clip-on earrings? Are her ears pierced? Because if her ears are not pierced, and many people don't have their ears pierced, then it would follow that she might just be wearing some clip-on earrings. Well, I investigated that, and the answer to that is that she does always wear pearls, but she never wears clip-ons. Kamala Harris has pierced ears. Here she is, young Kamala Harris. She really does love pearls, I'll tell you that. She's wearing pearls almost virtually every time you see her. Here's her again, proving that her ears are pierced. Here is her a third time. Okay, it's undeniable. She normally wears pearls, but she does not normally wear clip-ons. So what the heck is actually going on? Why is she wearing this earring? Women know that if your ears are pierced, you do not wear clip-ons ever. There's no reason. There's just no reason for you to wear clip-on if your ears are pierced, because you get your ears pierced, so you don't have to wear clip-ons. So then, as I was going through my female brain logic, a guy on my team decided to mansplain something. It was super annoying. He was like, well, Bluetooth, if it's Bluetooth accessible, then the range wouldn't be far enough for her to be getting any notes, plus there's a mic there. And I'm like, blah, 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 how far does Bluetooth go? They said 30 feet. They're only 30 feet. So it's very unlikely that Kamala Harris had Bluetooth-equipped earrings, which means, are there a pair of earrings that look like Kamala Harris's earrings that are not Nova earrings? And the answer is yes. And she's actually worn them many times before. They are these Tiffany earrings, these pearl earrings, and they sell them, and they look exactly like the ones that are in her ear. And you can also take a look at her wearing them at a different time when she was not speaking. This is just Kamala wearing a pair of Tiffany earrings, ladies and gentlemen. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to debunk this fun conspiracy theory. But it looks like Kamala Harris just really does like a good pair of pearls. And those ones look like clip-ons, but they are in fact not clip-ons. They are just stylish. I actually do like the earrings. I'm not going to hate. All right, guys, we have to move on.
So one of her team finally grew a conscience and just went, okay,
yeah,
this is too far-fetched.
Yeah. So that conspiracy theory was so fucking dumb.
Yeah.
That even Candace Owens shot it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, people can't grasp that Harris was actually prepared to debate Trump. And they were looking for any reason to go after her, but even Candace thought this was stupid. And for that, for saying so on her show, in a long clip no less, for being so good that I clipped it for this program, I say, as I rarely do, good job, Candace. Good job.
Now it's time for the 30 fuck-ups. And then one more good.
There's roughly 30 clips left. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Oh, well, shit.
I still think she's beyond hope in a lot of ways, but this was a good change-up. She goes on to talk about the Taylor Swift endorsement of Harris. It's pretty much what anyone would expect. I fought with myself for a minute over whether or not we would give it space, but I'm not entertaining it. Candace hasn't liked Taylor Swift for a long time, so naturally, she has shit to say about her. It's irrelevant and predictable. It takes up almost 8 minutes of her show.
Jesus.
Yeah, moving on. Candace does add a new lie to the Leo Frank bullshit.
All right, so let me tell you about the ADL. My friends over at the ADL. The ADL, an organization that was founded defending a pedophile and murderer named Leo Frank. Sorry, I'm in my Taylor Swift era. I just write a song about everything that happens to me. And that's what happened. That's literally the founding of the ADL, which is now remarkably called the Anti-Defamation League. What all they actually do is defame people because they realize that if you just call people names, then they, I guess, are not allowed to point out all the horrific things that you do, like defend pedophiles. Anyways, the ADL tweeted this. It's important when platforms like YouTube take action against anti-Semitic propaganda. Videos like Candace Owens promoting the false claim that Jewish people control the media are not only baseless but fuel dangerous anti-Semitic conspiracies. This has no place in our society. Yeah, so they're referring apparently to Kanye. No one promoted any conspiracy theories, but like I said, the point of the ADL is just to gaslight you. So that's why they defended a pedophile. No one cared that he was Jewish, but that guy was their boss, Leo Frank. He murdered and raped a 13-year-old little girl and then was convicted for that murder and rape unanimously with Jewish jurors. So like there was no question of how guilty he was. And then afterwards, because he was their boss, he was a president of B'nai B'rith, which was this Freemason group, they were like, how can we rehabilitate his image thereafter? And they started calling everybody anti-Semitic.
And this shows again how little she has ever cared to look into this material, which we have covered before. It should be said, no Jewish people convicted Leo Frank at his trial. Not a single one. He was declared guilty by 12 white, non-Jewish men. No minorities were present on the jury. I'll also say again that B'nai B'rith is not and has never been a part of Freemasonry. That's a classic Nazi claim that has never had proof presented to back it up. She goes on to defend her Ye interview, and then she dives into her comment reads, while Rumble doesn't have super chats, people can tip and be seen. So then Candace mentions one of the reasons she was taken down from YouTube, and it gets darker than I was prepped to hear the first time.
Also writes, my mom is Colombian and said that yes, Venezuela is sending criminals to the U.S. and yes, many of these gangs are satanic and perform animal sacrifice. Of course, by the way, one of the reasons that they took down the video on YouTube, they also took down the video where I spoke with Xavier Poussard regarding the pedophile ring, and we spoke about Brigitte Macron, and their reason was that I said satanic cult. And that's a dangerous conspiracy theory to suggest that there could ever be a satanic cult in the world. This is how you know you're getting close to truth. I mean, what a ridiculous reason to take a video down. You can't say the words satanic cults. No, obviously, there is one. That's the only reason why you would say no one can hear this is because there was truth in that. And I will be posting that interview onto X later today. And you can still find that on Spotify, Apple, and here on Rumble. So I advise you listen to it before they try to delete these things off of the internet, because I'm still convinced that the World Economic Forum running that simulation that they did a while ago about what would happen if we had an internet pandemic and they had to force shut down the entire internet, I still think they're going to do that. Just like they predicted the COVID pandemic, I think they're essentially running tests to see what would happen if they brought down the internet so that they could sanitize it, as they said in that simulation. They said, we're going to have to sanitize the internet if there's just a virus that's all over the web. We, the government, are going to have to take control, just like with COVID, but this time it's going to be on the web. So I really do encourage people to be conspiracy theorists. Consider that the government is showing you their hand and they're telling you what they want to do because they realize that too many people are waking up to what's happening today. Print things out, buy books, get them into your possession, and make sure that we stay organized, that we have our own websites, that we have our own technology. It's why I'm building my own database. We're going to have to do that, but don't just rely on the internet. Like I said, buy books, get hard copies, photocopy the things that you need to remember. Write them down. Go old school. That's really going to be our only guard against what I believe to be a government that fully just wants to wipe out history so that they can just make us live in an ever Orwellian present.
Yeah, she doesn't understand Orwell. So there's a lot going on there too. But to me, this is dark. Because Candace is presenting a future for her most rabid followers where the lies they've been relying on could be scrubbed from the internet. So she is telling people to print stuff, buy physical copies of books, and so on. But the basic fear that the internet will be somehow sanitized is a call to action among the worst types of people that believe this shit. Candace did more than just call something a satanic cult, as anyone that listened to our episode 19 would know, as I basically only cut the ad reads from her interview with Poussard. She was also blasted officially by YouTube for smearing Rabbi Schneerson's name several times with pure Nazi lies. So, she got what she had coming to her. But if anyone wants to join me in flagging her episodes on Spotify, Rumble, etc., please have at it. Rumble might be in her corner now, but I have a feeling, just a feeling, that if put under pressure, they would send her away just like the Daily Wire did. While I don't like her having her own platform, getting her removed from other sources of exposure and income is a step in the right direction. With that being said, I'm going to start flagging her content whenever I see it, regardless of platform, and that includes at locals. Now we get into episode 63.
It'd be funny if she gets kicked off of locals for being too much of a Nazi.
Oh God, I'd love it. I would love it.
All right, guys, happy Thursday. I promised you that today we were going to be discussing Building 7, 9/11, a lot of things that we are told that we should never forget. But I mean, I have a theory. I think in reality, there are a lot of things that we're supposed to never remember. I mean, we know how this works now. We're all kind of falling down the rabbit hole together, realizing that a lot of things that we thought were so really are not, and that in reality, there have been some people engaged in creating mass psychosis events, things that are so traumatizing to the public that it completely modifies our human behavior. And what bigger event, and I'm talking, of course, about myself at the time, I'm a millennial, I think I was in 6th grade, what bigger event do you have in your memory than 9/11? You know exactly where you were. And there may be some things, maybe you were too young, that should have struck you as odd then, but will definitely strike you as odd now. And we're going to talk about those things. I'm going to give you 5 things that you should definitely never remember about 9/11. That's what's coming up on Candace.
Yeah, this one came out on 9/11, and today's main topic is conspiracy shit about Building 7 at the World Trade Center, also known as WTC 7. From the top, a lot of this bullshit was covered in our previous video that she did about the Trade Center attacks, so we'll be noting that material but moving forward to the newer myths as we go along.
The fact that the word newer myths, that collection of words being in that exact arrangement.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't.
You don't like it?
No.
I had to listen to it a lot more.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean,
believe me, if you don't like it, I'm so fucking hating it. Yeah. But now I get to spread that.
All right, so what was the psychosis that was formulated after 9/11? I would say that all of us feared Muslims without question. I could not stand being around them. I just thought every single one of them was going to be a terrorist. I did. I felt that way. I didn't want to go to their houses. I didn't want to be friends with them. I actually felt so badly yesterday. There was some thread that went viral on Twitter, and it was a younger Muslim woman discussing how it was for her when on 9/11 she got picked up from school and her dad sat her down and explained to her essentially that things were about to get really bad for her. And she didn't understand. She didn't do anything. And her dad explained to her that didn't really matter because she was going to be blamed. And I felt badly because I know that I was one of these people that just blamed all Muslims. But by the way, I was programmed to do that. I mean, come on. You know that was the vibe they were putting down. They're all terrorists. Give up. They're going to come for us. They're taking down towers. They are radical. They're jihadists. And they impressed upon the youth, the future generation, that no matter what, whatever we did in the Middle East didn't matter because we were getting terrorists, right? It had a major implication on our foreign policy for decades to come. Still today, you're not supposed to bat an eyelash when Muslim kids are blown up. That's kind of the vibe. And if you do bat an eyelash, well, you'll end up on Rumble.
Yeah, so she isn't wrong about Muslims being treated terribly after 9/11. She's actually pushing past it quite a bit. What gets me is that she really believes she was let go from the Daily Wire and demonetized on YouTube, doing her show on Rumble now because she really believes that being against the Gaza genocide is what did her in. Not the very basic bitch anti-Semitism she put along with it, not the transphobia, not the slanderous comments about public figures, not the massive amount of misinformation and outright lies. She honestly believes that it was her stance on Gaza. Never mind that thousands of people that are against it aren't friends with Nazis and they seem to be doing fine. Mm-hmm. Which brings me to another point. She isn't banned from YouTube. Like I said earlier, you can still go there and see her content. She just isn't making money. So, I have to wonder, when this happens to these knuckleheads, how much money was she pulling from YouTube versus her ad reads? And with such a reduced footprint on Rumble, are her sponsors going to be paying as much when the contract turns around? I doubt it. As of right now, as I write this, she's gone from around 3 million YouTube viewers to 147,000 on Rumble. That is 20 times less viewers.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. She still has millions of followers on Twitter, but that number was always well over even her YouTube numbers. Deplatforming works. Whatever shows of her we cover here, if you were personally offended by the content of her program, take it to your podcast provider and report her episode. In most cases, you don't even have to write anything. Flag it and move on. Speaking of moving on,
Because you're not allowed to talk about these things in mainstream places, but the public is waking up and we're definitely going to discuss them. Just want to say right at the top here, I know there are so many people, look, I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, who know families, who know individuals whose lives were impacted by this event. There is no question that this event happened. And we don't speak about this event and all of these question marks because we disrespect these individuals, but actually it's out of a tremendous amount of respect. As in, if this had happened to my family members, I would never rest until I got the answers to the questions that I am about to ask. I would never rest. And so as I said, we are doing this out of reverence for the victims and the victims' families. So what do we have first? Okay, well, something that they don't want you to remember is how odd it is that in all of the madness and all of the days following 9/11 and in the day leading up to 9/11, we were essentially told that we couldn't find human bodies and we had to understand how steel could melt. But what luck, because we knew exactly who did it instantly, because they just kept finding passports. Do you remember this? Check out this news clip.
yeah, Candace is going to go on a long run about these passports. We discussed one in the last 9/11 episode, but there were 4 found total. 2 were found in the wreckage of Flight 93 in Pennsylvania. 1 we discussed the last time was found discarded and handed off to a cop on 9/11 before the attacks. And 1 was found in luggage that didn't make it onto the plane. That bag got rerouted and was located in Portland.
Oh.
Yeah. That one contained all the relevant information about the hijackers, the plans, anything investigators would have needed to know to start going in the right directions. While a conspiracy theory could easily be that it was too good to be true, I think it was really just dumb luck. Mm-hmm. If the flight it was supposed to be on had really contained it, that likely would have been burnt up in the attacks, which seems as good of a plan as any. This is a basic fact that Candace doesn't understand.
Another development on Saturday, New York officials revealed at a news conference here in the city that a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that. No other details were given, but the discovery prompted the FBI and police to expand the search area down in Lower Manhattan.
He says, if you can believe that, and the answer is no, I cannot believe that, but that is the reality. In total, we were told that 4 of the hijackers' passports survived in whole or in part. 2, they said, were recovered from the crash site of United Airlines Flight 93 in Pennsylvania. So like this plane crashed, but they were able once again to find paper. You guys have a passport today. Just imagine paper somehow where we're able to recover this from a crash site. And they also found the passport of 1 hijacker on American Airlines Flight 11. They said a passerby had picked it up and given it to an NYPD detective shortly before the World Trade Center towers collapsed. Now, of course, if you're thinking rationally and not emotionally, you're going, what's going on? What are these hijackers doing? Why are they sprinkling their passports? Like that in and of itself is weird. So you're telling me when that plane crashed in Pennsylvania, what did he roll down the window of the plane, which you can't roll down, and drop it out? Or he had it on him? And it just, again, was recovered. What's going on here? Why are there passports? And the World Trade Center, what happened as the plane was coming in? He dropped this passport. He was flying to New York. A lot of questions there. But again, these are supposed to be things that we are not supposed to remember. And if you can believe it, then I guess, like that guy says, then you can believe it.
Yeah, I can believe it. I also believe what I said about it. 2 were found burnt up in the Flight 93 wreckage. 1 was found discarded a few blocks away, and she didn't mention Muhammad Atta's treasure trove of documents that listed all 19 men and the plans as they were. So yeah, Candace goes on to talk about one of the things we mentioned the last time, and I'll briefly go over it here. The dancing Israelis that were taking selfies against the backdrop of the burning wreckage of the towers across the water from them. Candace uses it now, as she did months ago, to throw Israel into consideration for what she believes was an inside job. She then goes into another item we discussed last time, the false equivalency story regarding Otigo, the messaging app that people got a cryptic message that something bad was going to happen, and they failed to report it because it didn't have specifics, and so on. Again, because Otigo has an origin in Israel, she uses it for more anti-Semitic heavy-breathing and finger-pointing bullshit. We covered it before, go check out that episode. She goes on to repeat another basic lie we covered from that episode, the one about 4,000 missing Israelis that were supposedly in the area during the attack. Nazis use this as some sort of proof that Israel tipped off Jews to stay home or stay away from the towers on 9/11, which is bullshit. Moving on, Candace does an ad for Goldco, and then we get...
All right, so some people really are just that lucky. That's what you got to understand. People just get lucky, and I'll tell you, Larry Silverstein, he is one such person. By the way, you can fact check this and go down your own rabbit hole, but I was trying to figure out what this guy's background is, and apparently he owned a lot of clubs, like dance clubs, and there was a very interesting lawsuit brought against Larry Silverstein back in 2003. It was eventually dropped by the courts. The Vietnam War veteran was not able to bring it forward in New York, but he was alleging that Larry Silverstein and Bill Clinton and other politicians were involved in intentionally trying to flood heroin into America. Very interesting.
Candace got the year wrong. So let's start with the heroin bullshit. The case was tossed out of court because the man that brought the suit, named Harry Miller, filed a suit in which he named Bill Clinton, Richard Nixon, Ross Perot, and Colin Powell, alleged without evidence that these men conspired to distribute heroin in the United States. That was in 1993. It was thrown out in 1994 when a judge finally saw it in his courtroom, and it was not considered on appeal to higher courts. Anyway, Candace is talking now about Larry Silverstein, who we covered on the last 9/11 episode. Listeners may or may not recall, he was the one that had a dermatologist appointment on that morning. Candace brings up more bullshit involving him. I shouldn't have to say this, but he is Jewish. Anyway, he held the lease for the World Trade Center, and he had only recently taken it over a few weeks prior. He had the place insured against terrorist attacks because he had to, based on the fact that it had been attacked by terrorists previously. Anyway, Silverstein wound up in a lawsuit with his insurance companies, of which there were 22 total. Silverstein said that since there were 2 planes, it was attacked twice, and his payout to rebuild should be anywhere between $3.5 billion and $7 billion total. The companies balked because he had recently tried to screw them on premiums, and he only wanted them insured for $1.5 billion. The case dragged on, and he wound up with $5 billion from the insurance companies and $95 million from the airlines, even though he also sought out $3.5 billion from them as well. It took over a decade for these things to happen. But Nazis won't tell you that. They only point to, as Candace does, that Larry and his adult kids were not in the towers on 9/11. His kids worked there, but both got stuck in traffic on the way to work, as did a lot of other people that day. It's New York City, for fuck's sake.
That happens pretty regularly.
Yeah. Anyway, we're skipping most of her bullshit on this and drilling down to the newer stuff. Building 7.
And were therefore able to be alive when they collected that insurance money for that terrorist attack, which fortunately they had taken out a clause on in their insurance. So, yeah, lucky Larry. I mean, what are we going to make all of this? A lot of this has been memory hold.
No.
By the way, super weird video. I'm not sure if you've seen this. People sometimes, when you talk about Larry Silverstein, they'll say, "Pull it, Larry." And there's a reason for that. So Larry decided to sit down and do all of these interviews about 9/11 thereafter because he's the person that owned these buildings. People wanted to hear from him regarding this terrible terrorist event. And he shared this story about how he was on the phone with the fire department because, you know, it's really strange. If you examine the footage of Building 7 collapsing, have you guys actually seen that footage. You probably, maybe, I'm just going to jog your memory because, and by the way, don't listen to me. I am totally being conspiratorial here. It looks like it was a demolition. I mean, I've seen a demolition before. Just look at this video of the building going down. Yeah, there you go. And then it just kind of collapses all at once. Yeah. That's a video.
It's almost as if an object hit several of the center beams to bring down said thing, like in a demolition that would involve explosions going off on the center beams.
You're on the right track. Yeah. So let's get into this. WTC 7 was unique. It was built over an old substation, and as such, it had a central support column. It caught on fire as it took a heavy blast of the debris from when the North Tower collapsed earlier in the day. The blast ignited fires on all floors and damaged the structure. It collapsed because the central support gave way. Candace is about to tell a tale about Larry Silverstein being called Pull It Larry due to a misquoted video of him from a PBS documentary about the events of 9/11. It was not a controlled demolition. No evidence of explosives was found, nor anything else that would have brought it down except for failed engineering. That won't stop Candace, though, because facts never do.
I'm actually going to show you a side-by-side because I'm just going, that really looks like a controlled demolition. Look at this side-by-side. That, you don't even know which one is Building 7. That's just a side-by-side demolition and Building 7. So this obviously inspired tons of conspiracy theories, which were only furthered by this interview of Larry talking about how he told the fire department chief to pull it. Now I'm going to tell you what he says about why he said that, but first let's listen to Larry Silverstein, Lucky Larry, in his own words.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
That's very interesting. A lot of things interesting. So here I go with common sense again. I hate this, but, on a day like this, people running, screaming, being buried in rubble, looking for loved ones, fire department must have received how many phone calls? And you're telling me that the fire commander thought to himself in this emergency, hey, I should call and get the opinion of the building owner on how to do my job?
Yes, but also no. So given the circumstances, Silverstein was on the phone with the fire commander because his people put him through to the commander. Given his clout, he was granted access. His concern was for the safety of the fire department people inside the building. The other towers had come down already hours before, and he didn't want anyone else to be hurt. He told the commander to pull the firefighters out of the building. He figured it was probably a lost cause and no one else needed to die that day if it could be helped. There was no other communication between the men. But this bullshit is going to dominate several more minutes of episode 63, and having said what needs to be said, I am not going to play it. 9/11 was a tragedy, and Candace has said previously that people she went to school with had relatives that died or were affected by the event. It is simply ghoulish to dance on the graves of these people because she has conspiracy theories that have zero basis in reality, all because she doesn't like Jews. But of course, there is more that has to be debunked.
On the other side of this, there are some people who really are just that unlucky. And one such example, and so they're telling you, listen, you got to just believe in his luck. Larry's lucky. But BBC really was just unlucky when they accidentally reported that Building 7 had fallen 23 minutes before it fell. So what I just showed you, yeah, they already reported 23 minutes before it fell that it had fallen, and they already had the pre-baked excuse for why it fell, despite the fact that it was not hit by a plane. Anyways, just take a listen to the report that came out 23 minutes too early.
More on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attack.
Well, the building had been weakened. You know how it is sometimes, like when your house is on fire, and so then the house next to you just completely collapses. No? Hello? Don't you guys never seen that situation happen? Well, sometimes if there's a house on fire, just the house across the street can get stressed out and just feels fundamentally weakened. And Larry says to pull it. You know, this is just, there's no point in losing any more life. And he says that to, we don't know who. Doesn't matter, because he's at a dermatologist appointment.
Yeah, okay. BBC issued a retraction on this. And it's for the reasons that anyone would suspect. Ground Zero was chaotic, and a lot of stories came and went that day. In this case, Candace has no clue how large these buildings were.
No.
The North Tower, closest to 7, was one of the tallest buildings in the world at that time, which also made it one of the widest. A street separated them. 7 was also 47 stories tall, which made it smaller than the North Tower, but still larger than buildings in most cities. Here in Minneapolis, we have one slightly taller at 57 stories.
Okay.
Yeah, the IDC building.
Yeah.
That fucker is huge. I've delivered to it. It's ridiculous. And they have some really cool elevators.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Here's how it is, right? You go up like an escalator to the elevator lobby. You go up an escalator from the first floor to the elevator lobby. So technically like the second floor, whatever. You tap in what floor you're going to on a touch screen. Let's say it's 21.
Yeah.
Then what will happen is it will open an elevator that only goes to 21 for you.
Yeah.
And anyone else going to 21. It will not stop at any other floor.
Oh, it just goes up.
Yeah.
Okay.
The floors each have special elevators that only go to them. There's not like 6 elevators on a given floor.
Yeah.
There is one that will go to that floor. All the others will go to whatever other floors they're assigned to. But yeah, these elevators have specific floors that they will go to. So if you work on building, if you work on floor 21, you tap it in, you can stand confidently at that elevator and know it will open for you to go to your floor. And those fuckers move fast and smooth.
Yeah.
I've never been on an elevator that smooth in my life. And I mean, they are quick. Like you kind of, it's happening.
Yeah.
But it's so quick, it's over with. It's like, the first time I was on one, I was standing there with a guy who was also going to 21, and we're talking about, my job as we're waiting, and he's like, have you been on these before? I was like, no. He goes, they're really quick. Just be prepared for it. I was like, okay. I get on, and it's like, you can feel it.
Yeah.
But it's so smooth that it's kind of enjoyable. And it stopped, and I was like, oh, no fucking way, dude. He goes, and it opens up, and it's floor 21. I was like, motherfucker. And I'd been to other ones in that building, too. I've been up to 33 and 46 and shit. And every time it's usually a different elevator, and yeah, it only goes
up
to
and
those.
down.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It will go to 33 and whatever other ones it's assigned to, but that's it. They are only those ones. So yeah, it's pretty wild. I like it. But yeah. So yeah, the North Tower that fell and fucked up Building 7 was over twice 7's size at 110 stories.
Jesus.
Building 7 was 47 stories tall, right? So the North Tower was almost twice the size of our tallest building here. This is Godzilla level shit. Across the street.
Yeah. And
she wants to just brush it off as if it's homes in a neighborhood. for the proximity she was to New York City at the time. And according to her story, she actually did work in New York City a few years later. She should know all of this shit, but it doesn't stop her from lying.
Anyways, let's move on. I feel like this is just getting crazy. It doesn't matter that they reported a little bit early. They had a perfectly valid excuse. They said that they copied the report from another publication, Reuters. Reuters said it first, which doesn't really answer the question as to why any of them said it first before the tower had actually fallen, given that the tower was not directly next door. There were also buildings in between that did not fall, but this tower did. You know, there is actually something interesting to know, in case you haven't looked into it, about Building 7, World Trade Center Building 7. Do you know what the tenants are? Like, who was working there at the time? Well, you had the CIA, the DOD, the Secret Service, the IRS, and the SEC. All of that was what was going on in that building, as well as other multinational investment banks. Very interesting. That tower fell in under 7 seconds. Like a textbook type of implosion of some sort.
It's only textbook today, and it was not an implosion, because they learned a lot about the weaknesses of a building constructed in this manner. But also, she is right that all of those agencies and several finance companies were located in Building 7, which is unfortunate because of the fuel that it gives these fools. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as other agencies, lost all of their relevant case files as a result of this collapse. This is one reason why there was a ready market for cloud computing services that would be stable in the event of another event of this scope occurring. Investigations across various sectors had to either be abandoned or started up from nothing once the dust had settled. I have sometimes wondered if the many financial crimes of Trump and friends would have been acted on sooner if this hadn't happened. We'll never know. But I don't think this was planned in any way. The evidence doesn't bear it out. It is unfortunate that the building had been it is fortunate that the building had been evacuated and the fire crews exited the building when they did, because no one died in number 7. On to the Pentagon now.
Regardless of it not being struck by an airplane or having any kind of structural damage. It just went down. Yeah, you're like, I don't even know which one of these is supposed to be Building 7, but yeah, that is what happened. And like I said, that was reported 23 minutes before it even happened. Who could have imagined it? Who could have been so unlucky as to have accidentally predicted that it was going to fall? But then let's flip again, because some people really are that lucky. We're back to luck again. It was an unlucky, but then it was lucky because the Pentagon, now that's a really interesting thing, and this really is the number 5 thing that I'm going to have to ask all of you guys to simply forget, okay? A lot of strange things about the Pentagon. A lot of strange things happened that day, but you should know that leading up, Pentagon was getting audited, and they had, and they always have done this really since, lost $2.3 trillion.
Yeah, okay, and now we have the start of why the Pentagon was hit storyline. I'll let Candace go on to further explain this a little, but the Pentagon and the larger Department of Defense was not under an audit to find $2.3 trillion. The DoD is under almost constant audit due to its size and multifaceted scope of operations in the federal government. No full and complete audit has ever been accomplished because doing an audit of any entity requires shutting down a part of it just long enough to gather data and hoping that stays within a proper range while you work on compiling figures and hoping some other entity doesn't mess it up. Much of the military works 24/7, regardless of what is going on in the outside world. When Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense at the time, said the figure of $2.3 trillion, he wasn't talking about that kind of money just being missing. He was saying that's how much has been unaccounted for in the U.S. military overall, combined since the founding of the United States. The U.S. military budget in 2001 was only $304 billion, so about 7 times less than $2.3 trillion. One of my many jobs I had growing up was that I worked for a company that performed small asset audits, mostly on retailers. We would go in, shut a door down when we could, and our team would count every sellable asset in the store and our hip calculators would feed the info to our managers, who would compile an on-site report for store management. If the team we had on site was large enough, we could knock out an average store audit in under 4 hours, many times less. When we did a single warehouse audit at a naval base in Jacksonville, the military people were constantly up our asses to get it done faster, which was rare and borderline abusive, as most retailers were happy to just let us do our fucking jobs. This was a single warehouse experimenting with outside auditors. A single small warehouse that they didn't think should be down for only a few hours to complete a basic audit. So yeah, auditing the military overall would be a nightmare, since they don't like anything to be down even for a few hours, and assets can shift around constantly. But yeah, the $2.3 trillion figure is absurd to use in this way, and also that figure came from Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, who Candace should know better than to quote, since she despises the Bush White House and the neocons so fucking much. Rumsfeld said some estimates said that the DoD had $2.3 trillion in unaccounted money, but that wasn't all an oops. It was more of a missed account of many various transactions because the DoD doesn't have uniform accounting standards across the many branches and offices. And to further complicate matters, the estimate that there were $2.3 trillion in accounting deficiencies came from a report published in February of 2000 and had been reported various ways in the media prior to 9/11. But Candace goes on to claim that NASA is a black budget, and it isn't. But here you go.
Oopsies. I know we keep taxing you guys, and we're taxing you because of things NASA, which has become a black budget, and wars overseas that are not really tangible.
True.
But then it comes time to audit. So the way that audit works is that the DoD is supposed to audit the Pentagon. So you're following me here? The DoD's office was in the World Trade Center, so they are auditing in Building 7. Where did the $2.3 trillion go? And they issued a report, the DoD, saying that they're not giving us any of the files. We're unable to say and account for this $2.3 trillion.
No.
You had Donald Rumsfeld being like, well, technology is changing and we're doing things the old way here at the Pentagon. And in the old way, we just can't find $2.3 trillion. And then, could you imagine, both World Trade Center, where they're doing the auditing, goes kaput, and then the Pentagon gets hit by a missed plane.
The auditing wasn't being done at just ground zero. It was being done across various branches and offices, as it is almost all of the time. Candace, as usual, has pulled this shit from lunatics on YouTube and Reddit and TikTok. Then we get into the next bullshit, that the Pentagon was hit by a missile and not a plane.
I know. It's just so weird. So there were all these people who were like, yeah, why haven't we seen a plane hitting it? You remember this? You remember being alive for this? It was just, you looked at the building and there was just kind of a hole in the middle. We were told a plane hit. And what was interesting is actually CNN had a reporter on the ground that day that was able to get up close to this after the crash and reported that there was no plane. By the way, they only aired this once. And then it got memory hold. So I'm going to show you what this reporter said, who was able to walk up to the Pentagon building after it was allegedly hit by a plane. Take a listen.
Outside the Pentagon, CNN's military affairs correspondent Jamie McIntyre. And Jamie, you got very close to where that plane went down.
That's right, Judy. A while ago, I walked right up to next to the building with firefighters were still trying to put out the blaze. The fire, by the way, is still burning in some parts of the Pentagon. And I took a look at the huge gaping hole that's in this sideway, but from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual side of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around.
Yeah, and they didn't show us anything for years. A lot of this stuff.
Flight 77 was carrying 64 passengers, and when it struck the Pentagon, it hit at about 530 miles per hour and killed 125 people working in the Pentagon immediately, plus the passengers on the flight. In total, 184 people lost their lives that day alone. That clip had been edited by 9/11 truthers to say that no plane hit the Pentagon. This is bullshit, of course. The plane massively damaged 3 of the 5 sections of the Pentagon building, and Jamie was the only reporter allowed up due to his credentials and relationship with military brass at the time. But no one, not even him, was allowed beyond a certain perimeter because the rescue crews were hard at work trying to save lives and not get killed in the process. What she isn't playing is the full clip where he talks about seeing parts of the plane on the helipad outside, and he is quoted as saying that one identifiable piece was about 3 feet long or 1 meter.
Was classified, and also what's really interesting is they decided to confiscate 82 videos of people that just had CCTV footage, gas station across the street. The FBI agents went out there and made sure within the first minutes following this attack, they confiscated all of the footage surrounding of this plane that allegedly hit the Pentagon, and there were military men that were there that day that swore that they heard a missile, said that they had lived there, had fought overseas. It was unmistakable what the sound of a missile was, and they heard a missile that day. And I'm just going to show you, by the way, the Pentagon building here after the plane, which that CNN reporter is saying he did not see even when he was up close and examining firefighters, which were whom were trying to get the fire out. This was it right here. So yeah, a plane must have gone into there sideways, and then for whatever reason was unable to be observed by a reporter that was up close. And for whatever reason, people that were there that day who said that they heard a missile were quieted, were not being listened to by the public, and we were just told that a plane definitively hit the Pentagon. But the more important story here is that the Pentagon then, I mean, how could we ask them after such a horrific terrorist attack, to still be held to trying to find those trillions of dollars? That's so unfair. We had to come together as a nation, accept that we had been blindly robbed by the Pentagon.
Yeah, Candace is the only robber here because she is leading her audience into lies. There was footage of the attack that was not confiscated. 82 businesses did not lose their camera footage to the FBI, and CNN talked with one guy that claimed to be a veteran and said the plane coming in low and fast, which he witnessed, sounded like a missile. The reporter that spoke with him confirmed that it was a plane because the man saw it strike, as did hundreds of other people that heard it coming in, because it came in so low that it clipped light poles on the streets leading to the Pentagon. This is utter horseshit, this evidence bullshit, this evidence of the fucking missile. Got me so pissed off. Evidenced by the fact that she isn't playing the full CNN clip, and she isn't playing the CNN clip of the veteran that they spoke with. Also, for her to sit back and call this a missile and not the flight that it was, Flight 77, she is pissing on the memory of almost 200 people that lost their lives and many others that were hurt in that attack mentally and physically. It's fucking ghoulish of her.
Because that's what we do in times of a mass psychosis event. We come together, we hug, and we decide that, hey, that's all right if you lost $3.2 trillion. We don't know where it went. You don't know where it went. And conveniently, the two offices that should know where it went, the people that are auditing, are now no longer available. They've just been taken out by terrorist attacks. In case you don't know, the Pentagon controls nearly 70% of the budget of the federal government. And yet, when they make announcements like the $600 billion that is currently missing right now in aid that has gone to Ukraine, no one seems to ever bat an eyelash. Yeah.
Because it isn't true, Candace. There has been no mention of $600 billion of aid to Ukraine going missing. Mostly because we haven't sent that much to them. The total amount we have sent to Ukraine since the start of the Russian aggression on them is $174 billion. Most of that is earmarked for defense, but about 30% plus is for infrastructure, housing, refugee protection, and so on. All of this shit she is saying is direct Russian propaganda. This is the kind of stuff that Dave Rubin and Tim Pool were being paid to do. Not to really talk up how great Russia is, because Dave Rubin's very life runs afoul of Russia's anti-homosexuality laws, especially his marriage.
Yeah.
but to talk shit about Ukraine, factual or not. But back to the topic of that short clip. The offices in WTC 7 were not the ones doing the auditing of the DoD. It is almost under constant audit at all levels at all times, because even if the information is flawed, it's better than not having a single fucking clue.
Yeah.
Does seem pretty obvious that there are funneling money through the Pentagon without any issues, and when you ask questions, well, that's not appropriate. That's not you being a patriotic American. Rah, 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 war, war, war. And by the way, that, again, was obviously the end result of 9/11. Forget all the holes, forget all the questions, forget all the conspiracy theorists, forget the fact that the term conspiracy theorist only came into the lexicon, only entered into the American conscience after JFK was shot.
Saying a lie 1,000 times doesn't make it true, Candace. Conspiracy theorist entered the lexicon in the late 1800s to describe conspiracy theories that the English had helped the American South in the Civil War. It got more traction since then, but it is a term from the late 1800s. I don't care how many times she says it. It simply isn't true.
And you know, a lot of the same suspects were on the ground the day that JFK was shot, too. I should do an episode on all of the weird things, and similarly things that are classified and just will never get declassified about JFK being shot. We just have this habit of just, forget it, just forget it. The point is, hate Muslims. That is the point, that is the lesson, that is the my psychosis formation. And if you ever break from that and you start to wonder whether or not it is plausible that your government could be so evil, that they would allow this event to take place, that they would allow American citizens to be ruthlessly murdered because there was a larger military-industrial complex incentives that they wanted to help feed, a larger narrative, and maybe it was simply an incursion, a nonstop incursion into the Middle East. If you ever get that idea, if you then start thinking, okay, well, didn't we then kind of inexplicably go to war with Iraq despite the fact that the passports that were found were Saudi, and then we said we were going to war with Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction, that we then went in there and we killed 1 million, I'm talking 1 million Iraqi civilians, women and children murdered ruthlessly looking for weapons of mass destruction that were then never found?
Not exactly. The 1 million dead Iraqi figure seemed a bit high, so I went digging. According to an official source, the Iraq body count says that a maximum of 210,000 or so, but other estimates on the ground that examined various other factors, such as preventable deaths from lack of adequate hospitals because war and occupation took a toll, they only put the number at about 350,000, which is still horrific. No one should get off freely for any of that shit, because there were no WMDs found like they expected. But the term weapons of mass destruction, or WMD, has a wide range of reference and can refer to anything from chemical weapons like sarin gas, or worse to dirty bombs, to full auto machine guns. While 1 million dead Iraqi civilians is possible, it isn't supported by figures from Iraq.
If you start thinking about that, and then you go, wait a second, and then we just suddenly pulled out, and then we were in Afghanistan, and this is all because of Saudi, and we never invaded Saudi, and what is going on? How does any of this make sense? If you start to put that all together and then arrive at this question of literally what the hell is the United States doing in the Middle East? How could war in the Middle East ever be serving our interest way over here? If you get that idea and you start asking yourself that question, let me remind you that it's dangerous. It's a dangerous question to ask yourself. It's a dangerous conspiracy theory to ask yourself, and only the craziest conspiracy theorists would just go back and look at evidence and believe their own eyes. You know, we have journalists now, and those journalists are in the mainstream, and they will be doing the observing for you, and they will tell you what to think. And so, like I said, put that away, and just remember the instructions. The instructions are to hate Muslims, to never ask what the hell it is we're doing in the Middle East and why we can't stop, to never ask which country it is that is benefiting from everything that we're doing in the Middle East. And, you know, don't believe your own eyes. That's always the point, the main point. Don't believe your own eyes. All right, guys, before I get into reading some of your comments, I want to remind you that I am always speaking freely. I'm always speaking purely. And that is why I love that one of the sponsors of this show is Pure Talk.
Yeah. at least she actually threaded it with what she was talking about this time. But also, you know, if only we had a president within the last 4 years or so, you know, that pulled everything that just about everything that we had out in the Middle East, out of the Middle East, because it's none of our fucking business what's going on there.
Yeah.
If only, you know, that was a thing, and you know,
it would have been nice to have maybe a nice older white man, in there that maybe did a thing, such as full American involvement from Afghanistan and Iraq. It would have been nice if one of those dudes had done that.
And
I mean, perhaps even one of the poorest senators that ever worked in the Senate, that took the Amtrak train to work every day. Maybe if we got somebody like that 4 years ago, you know, perhaps that kind of guy would put a vice president up that was of mixed heritage, and a prosecutor, no less. Maybe someone like that 4 years ago could have, you know, done some real good.
You know,
fucking ridiculous.
God, it's like she. I mean, I know she's not going to count anything that Biden's done as good, but
no,
I mean,
not one bit. No.
She's got a problem with American involvement in the Middle East, and and Biden fucking fixed that by going, okay, no, we don't need. Why are we still over there?
Yeah.
We did the thing that we were set out to do.
We didn't even do that.
No,
like it was just 20 years of bullshit. Yeah. So
I thought that the intention was to kill Bin Laden.
Well, that was a thing. Yeah, that happened during Obama's time. Actually. Yeah. Well, you know, to Candace saying that no journalist, etc., can ask these questions, I would say to her, explain Michael Moore then. Now, this is a little bit before your time, but you know, this was all bullshit because people were speaking up constantly during the Iraq War and Afghanistan. Popular films that called it all bullshit and demanded answers, like Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11. Fiction movies like Jarhead, and others won awards and made money, and shined a light on all of this and more. People had been critical of all of this since it happened. What people that follow Candace fail to realize, if they take her at her word, is that she has been booted from most respectable platforms because she has been repeating Nazi talking points on not just Israel but Jews in general for quite a while, and has befriended people that are Nazi apologists. I've met and known the kind of people that would be her ideal audience member, though, and I can tell you that they are the most uninformed, racist, fear-filled people I have ever met. And when it comes to people like Candace, they would call her as, quote, one of the good ones, unquote. But they still wouldn't entirely trust her if she were in their presence. And it's all kinds of fucked up.
My favorite thing to do around those sorts of people, because I worked with a couple of those sorts of people, was to speak the little bit of Spanish that I do know around them. Or like, whenever I get ticked off, just start spewing foreign cuss words. And they just get like this look in their eye that just like makes me happy and warm inside. Because they're like, oh God, he's going off in another language. Like,
you should learn some Klingon. It sounds rough and it'll really fuck him up. So, that is the last clip of the 9/11 show. And if she does more 9/11 stuff in the future, I doubt it'll get worse than this, but if it does, we'll go through it.
We thought it wouldn't get any worse than the first time she did 9/11 stuff.
You know, I mean, because honestly, like, having lived through, like, as an adult, like, 9/11 happened when I was 20 years old. I was almost 21. Anyway, 9/11 happens, and, you know, I kind of lived through all that. There's a lot of shit I didn't remember because it wasn't worth remembering. And there's a lot of stuff that I accepted as fact because I watched it. I watched it happen live, you know. And things like there's a memorial at the fucking Pentagon.
Yeah.
A really big memorial at the fucking Pentagon for, you know, for the people that died that day.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, for all the people that died that day, except the hijackers. Fuck them, guys. They don't need to be mentioned. But yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Hell, even in the video game. Fuck the full title. If you know which game I'm talking about, you know it. Division 2.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, it's post some sort of terrorist attack thing happening. Well, you're playing part of the Division, of course, and one of the missions you have to go and do is at the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And when you get to the Pentagon, if my memory is serving me right, they even have the memorial completely untouched.
Yeah.
The rest of the game, everything is like in ruins, you know, parts of buildings are a bit collapsed over and shit.
Yeah.
But they left the memorials that mattered alone and ungraffitied in the game.
Well, that's good. Yeah, so here we are with the episode 64 cold open.
All right, guys, happy Friday. It's going to be a happy Friday, don't worry. We've got tons of funny content coming up. But first, I wanted to ask you guys if I'm the only person that doesn't feel like Trump has this election totally in the bag. Like, I'm wondering if conservatives might be deluding themselves a little bit with hope. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what's been on my mind. Beyond Taylor Swift, by the way, the Democrats are now rolling out John Legend to remind people in Springfield, Ohio, that they should not care that they've just received a 20% population increase in the form of Haitian migrants who are, some say, eating the dogs and eating the cats. Plus, Shannon Sharpe, I don't know if you saw this. This is a oopsies. He's a former NFL player, Hall of Famer, podcaster, altogether well-liked guy. Well, he accidentally went live on Instagram while engaged in some sexual relations. Should he be punished for this audio porn by accident thing? All that coming up on Candace.
Yeah, so that's the tone of this one. I shouldn't have to say it, but we're not going to go through the Shannon Sharpe accidental porn thing, even though it is kind of funny. It falls into celebrity bullshit. Anyway, first up, Candace has some thoughts about mail-in voting. And the next clip is one that I do not like doing. For full disclosure, on her show, Candace played a small montage of a debate where mail-in voting was brought up and Trump was asked if he would accept the outcome, win or lose. She does not play his response. I'm telling you about it because the audio is so bad I had to cut it from the next clip.
All right, so if you're a good detective, according to Sherlock Holmes, you always pay attention to the dog that didn't bark. You know, so the thing that wasn't said, the voice that you didn't hear. And I'm kind of interested now in the dog that didn't bark on debate night. Have you thought about that? Like something that was an obvious topic that should have come up that totally didn't come up. We should pay attention to it because it's a clue. Because if you remember, to jog your memory about the 2020 election debate, well, that dog had a very loud bark. So let's rewind. This is an old clip, an old montage of debates during the 2020 election cycle. Take a listen. It's super interesting to look at that in the retrospect. They just knew what was coming. You know, I am one of the people, doesn't think, but knows, obviously, that the FBI was involved on January 6th. And they knew that that was coming because they knew that they were radically transforming the way that we voted and that they had thought of that as a mechanism to rig our...
Just want to point out, just going to pause this real quick here. Mail-in voting has been around for a long fucking time. It wasn't some radical transformation of the voting system. A lot of places, especially rural places, have had it around for just decades. So, yeah, it wasn't a radical transformation of shit. The fact that more people were doing it because of COVID was exceptional. But
also, the FBI was, in on January 6th. So that's why all of the camera footage from the internal of... I don't remember if it was FBI or Secret Service, but the guys that were inside the White House when it was getting rushed, that were in their, uniformed suits and shit, holding their guns, looking a bit terrified because they're like, I'm going to have to actually shoot some unarmed civilians.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, I mean, and that's another thing, too, is that the FBI was involved in a little way, but shit went sideways.
Yeah.
In ways that no one could predict. I don't think anyone really thought that they were going to break into the building and then make a human chain of ants to get in there and then unlock it from the inside. You know, but yeah, the crowd massively outnumbered the meager police force, and at some point they just were like, we can't do anything about this right now.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, here's the rest of the clip.
Elections. I will never change my mind in the fact that the 2020 election was rigged and they used COVID as an excuse. And they were preparing us, but you'll accept the results, and you're expecting that it could take a very long time for us to count the votes as we determine how many votes it is that we need to beat Trump and then magically find them because we've got all of these mail-in ballots that we can just mass produce. Yeah. Well, it's interesting to think about that, this insistence. They were talking about fair elections, peace. That was what they cared about. Peaceful transfers, everything needed to be fair. And yet, you would think that if peace was something that they were after, and they were worried about elections being fair, that they would still be concerned about that now in 2024. And here is the dog that did not bark during this week's debate. Do you guys remember this taking place just 62 days ago?
What follows next is the sounds of the first attempted assassination in Pennsylvania. I see no reason to play it here, even for Schadenfreude. Then she reminds people about it, of course, with her own thoughts.
It's super interesting to look at that in the retrospect. They just knew what was coming. You know, I am one of the people, doesn't think, but knows, obviously, that the FBI was involved on January 6th. And they knew that that was coming because they knew that they were radically transforming the way that we voted.
Oh, I just played the clip again for no reason. Here's Dick Bloom.
It has been just 62 days since a lone shooter almost assassinated President Trump. You want to talk about fair elections? Well, the person that was just about to secure the Republican nominee was supposed to be dead. He was supposed to be murdered. And we were all supposed to be watching it because, like I said, they wanted all of us to be watching him live on stage. They wanted us to watch him being shot because it was supposed to be a mass psychosis event. It was supposed to make us all modify our behavior in what way. And it's important to realize how strange it is that this never came up during the debates. January 6th came up during the debates, but not the fact that somebody who more than half of the nation is behind and wanted to be their nominee was almost killed. They didn't ask Kamala Harris a single question about that, and that strikes me as remarkably strange. In fact, it strikes me as remarkably strange that we've moved on from this story so quickly. The media is not speaking about it. There's a reason for that. And I think it's incredibly compelling and powerful that Melania Trump, who rarely speaks, has used her voice to underscore how strange it is that we have moved on from this most important narrative. Take a listen to her.
The attempt to end my husband's life was a horrible, distressing experience. Now, the silence around it feels heavy. I can't help but wonder, why didn't law enforcement officials arrest the shooter before the speech? There is definitely more to this story, and we need to uncover the truth.
Yeah, I'm getting real sick of this idea that everything is just a remarkable security failure when these sorts of events take place. A remarkable security failure is what took place, which is something that could have led to a civil war, something that would have radically transformed this election. A remarkable security failure. Quite interestingly, Richard Blumenthal, he's a congressman up in Connecticut, has spoken out about how strange it is. And he says that the public is going to be quite appalled and shocked when more information about this assassination attempt is made public. Take a listen to what he had to say yesterday.
Yeah, again, we have a situation of terrible audio. Like, it's really bad. Basically, and you can look this up if you like, the statements are all publicly accessible. He said that a report is coming on the entire debacle, and it should be released by the end of September. He said that he expects that the American people will be shocked by how poorly security was handled in the incident, including the events leading up to it. Blumenthal, it should be noted, is a Democrat with an impressive record in the military and in politics. But all of that said, I think anyone looking at it objectively can see that it was a massive fuck-up. Anyway.
Who does the Department of Homeland Security work for? When were they established, all of these state departments? Who do the CIA work for? I mean, we've all kind of come to the conclusion that's obviously not for the American people, but we do know what they serve, what interests they serve, and their interests might be an answer to the question of why the state wanted to murder Donald Trump. That's because that's what happened, obviously. The state wanted Donald Trump to be assassinated, and the reason that they wanted Donald Trump to be assassinated was because they did not want him to secure the Republican nomination. So let's run it this way. What would have happened if Donald Trump was assassinated? Who would have clinched the Republican nominee? Well, if what we know is that what they care about, the CIA, of course, is just international dominion, constantly going to war. The military-industrial complex is what we are referring to. They want nonstop war. And you go, okay, well, why can't Trump be president? Well, because Trump was averse to war. We know that. Ran and he spoke about bringing our troops home. Even this week on the debate stage when he was asked about the Ukraine question, he danced around it a little bit, and you could sense that he does not believe that we have any business in Ukraine. That is problematic for the military-industrial complex, because they're always itching to go to war because they have incentives that are not made public. We don't know what it is, like I said, that we're doing in the Middle East, why we are nonstop bombing the Middle East. We have no idea why we got involved in Ukraine, but we do know that these things were able to happen quickly under a Biden presidency, and the reason for that is because Biden is effectively dead, okay? And that's who they want in office. They want somebody that they can severely blackmail, someone who's got skeletons in their closet, someone like a Emmanuel Macron type character who's married to a man and has been involved likely in some other interesting stuff. And they go, okay, well, you can be the person that is going to be the front, because that's all it is. It's supposed to be performative. We're supposed to think the president is leading the country. Biden clearly has not been leading the country. That is abundantly obvious to the entire world at this moment. So who is? Like I said, they just want a person that's going to do what they say, not somebody like Trump. Trump's not good for that, okay? Trump's not going to take that sitting down. He's not going to, when someone says, well, we're just going to war and pull the people out of Afghanistan tomorrow. It doesn't matter how many American troops die. We want them out so that we can immediately transfer the money that was going into Afghanistan over to Ukraine. And that's what happened. In like a week. It's unbelievable when you take a...
Yeah, try 178 days. It was about 178 days between Afghanistan and the start of sending Ukraine aid. Not 1 week. Closer to 6 months. And the Afghanistan fuck-up was set to be worse under Trump. He wanted to order everyone to clear out months before they did, without a solid plan in place. The whole thing would have been worse, not just for the soldiers leaving, but also for the many helpers that were guaranteed a trip out to America for their part in being local guides, interpreters, and informants. But of course, she goes on to bat for the big, strong, orange emperor more.
Look at the finances. It's not somebody that's going to ask questions, okay? They don't need somebody like Trump in office. They need someone that's going to go along with the show. And so they wanted to kill Trump. I'm not buying this lone shooter narrative. I'm completely done with believing in any of these lone shooter narratives after having read that book. But I tell everybody to read Chaos. You need to learn about MKUltra. You need to learn about all of these programs to brainwash people to commit crimes. That is a reality. They wanted to brainwash people to commit crimes. And again, the most heinous crimes, when you go back and you reflect on all of the murders and all of the serial killers that you think you know about, there is always going to be an angle that involves our government, which should terrify you, okay? But be happy that it provides clarity about what's actually happening in this country. So Donald Trump is not the establishment candidate. That is abundantly clear. That is abundantly obvious. We should recognize that. And they are so desperate not to have him in office that they tried to kill him. Because if they had been successful and they had killed him, well, then what was right around the corner was the Republican convention. And it would have been an open convention. This means that the Republican delegates would have been able to decide, oh my gosh, well, it's not Trump, so we're just going to decide who we want to fill his shoes. This would have been an effective coup. Just like they did with Biden, it would have been an effective coup. And who would they have picked? Well, the person who had dropped out before and who had rather conspicuously announced that she was suddenly speaking at the RNC was Nikki Haley. And Nikki Haley is about as pro-military industrial complex as it gets. she would.
Yeah, so Candace has been on this tip for a bit. Nikki Haley, for those who don't remember, well, first, I envy you. But second, Nikki Haley was Trump's ambassador to the UN. She is a former governor of South Carolina and was raised as a Sikh. She is of Indian descent, and her parents are both Indian. Haley ran for the Republican nomination earlier this year, but she was one of the last dropouts. Given the people Candace knows, she might have some insight into the pull Haley has in the Republican Party, but she's a non-starter to most people outside of it. I have no opinion on her either way, but according to a bunch of opinions I read through quickly, Haley is more of a neocon, more willing to put America into the business of other countries than Trump is. The hardcore base like Candace doesn't like Haley because Haley supports Ukraine and doesn't like the idea of a federal ban on abortions. She is basically their version of Hillary Clinton, always waiting around the corner, regardless of whether or not she even still wants the fucking job. She's a neocon and I don't care for her, but it's funny that Candace sees her as a threat for no real reason. She goes on this trip for several minutes, and I'm playing it because it's useful to see where her fears lie, even unfounded, and how she will attempt to use her charisma to warp her hardcore audience and how they see the various candidates.
It's the favored neocon pick. In fact, she took a very long time for her to even drop out. All she talks about is war. War, war, war. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Woman's never would have met a war that she did not like. She would have been a perfect candidate, and then it would have been a two-horse race, and the deep state would have been very happy. So why am I worried about the Trump campaign? Well, because if they are so desperate to not have him be in office that they will murder him, then have the establishment media bury the story, so much so that it's not even asked about on the debate stage, then it means that they already have a plan that is in action right now. And I am concerned that the Trump campaign is being squeezed right now by neocons. I do. I believe it. You think about all of the people that were pro-Hillary Clinton conservatives. Pro-Hillary Clinton. So much so, never Trump, that they were willing to have Hillary Clinton be in office. Now, why would that be? Because there is no left and right when it comes to the military-industrial complex. This is how you get someone like Meghan McCain saying that she's voting for Kamala. Because they're voting for the same exact interests. People that have investments, Lockheed Martin, people whose families have been enriched by never-ending wars, by selling out the American people, they are okay whether it's a left candidate or a right candidate, so long as it is a war candidate. And a war candidate is who they want in office, and I think they're squeezing him. I think it's weird that all these people that were so never Trump are now the most vocal Trump supporters right now. And I think he's capitulating to them because his people around him are telling him, this is great, this is a sign that you're bringing people in. But in reality, I think that they got smart. They realized that going never Trump didn't stop him from getting into the White House in 2016. And so they instead tried to have their candidate beat Trump. And we tried DeSantis, we tried Nikki Haley. That didn't work. And so now they're just going to pretend that they support him. And in reality, they're supporting him by, I think, pulling him away from his prior MAGA more isolationist beliefs. And I genuinely believe this. I believe that this is an intentional infiltration. I believe that they are creating an illusion. I don't even know if these people are actually going to vote for him behind closed doors. I truly believe that their strategy here is to kill him with kindness, and it concerns me. Let me tell you, I obviously am hoping that I am wrong. I hope that I am wrong. This has not been a beautiful hand that we are watching being played by the neocons who really want Kamala Harris to win because she is someone who has proven that she can be controlled and she will do whatever it is that they say. I hope I'm wrong. And I hope with everything in me that Trump beats Kamala in November. But I do not think that in a circumstance where they are not even mentioning that he was almost killed, something that would be talked about non-stop every day, a dark day in democracy. We're talking about January 6th, and this man was almost shot on stage? What does that signal to you? They want to move on from it because they have another plan that they want to implement, and they want the people to forget about the fact that the most violent event since JFK got shot in broad daylight almost took place in this country. Again, I hope I'm wrong, but I have to express my apprehensions. All right, guys, I want to remind you about preborn.
Again, gold. Come on, go for the gold that people are even. She does the meal buckets, right?
Yeah.
Go for the
I haven't
fucking
heard the meal buckets in a while, though. I think maybe they pulled out.
Oh.
I think maybe they pulled out, because I haven't heard them in a long time.
But
I labeled that clip Trixie Neoconzes.
The fucking...
Well, see, she'll say more of this over time, as I've listened to the episodes from this week, but she and others in her sphere are beginning to see how easy it is to control and manipulate the Orange Emperor.
Yeah.
As it always has been.
Mm-hmm.
Next is an update that she had to do, and it is a nice gift for the near end of this episode. And anyone who listened to our episode 19, Poussard the Coward, will be familiar with the content, but here is Candace spinning it as only she can.
All right, guys, let me jump into this brief little update because it's very interesting. People were messaging me going, did you see the update about Natasha Ray, the update about Brigitte Macron? And I had already warned you guys that this was coming, that the media was trying to establish a red herring because the evidence is so overwhelming. It is just inescapably true that Brigitte Macron was a man, lived her life as a man named Jean-Michel Trogneau for about 30 plus years before transitioning into Brigitte and taking the name of what was her little sister. Obviously, this is so true that they just keep censoring this off the internet, and they removed my interview with the journalist who broke the story, a man named Xavier Poussard, who publishes a newspaper called Faits et Documents, and like I said, 3-year investigative work, and he has never been sued for defamation. Now, the media is intelligent enough to understand that this is all happening in France. We are in the English-speaking world, and so what they needed to do was to rely on people being unable to read the document in a court case and then send out their Mockingbird journalist to pretend that the journalist was being sued for defamation. Xavier Poussard has never been sued for defamation. What actually happened, and this is why you're now seeing this headline as they're declaring it a win, 2 women guilty of slandering Brigitte Macron. These 2 women do not own the publication that published the 6-part docu-series about the transition. So what they did was they went after one of the investigators, which was a French woman, and her name is Natasha Ray. After they had published the 6-part series, Xavier Poussard published it, Natasha Ray, who had assisted in his investigation, went onto YouTube to talk about it. They did like a 4-hour podcast typed interview where she spoke about the case. And so they had 4 hours of content. They needed her to just make one false statement in order for them to be able to sue her for defamation, even if the false statement had nothing to do with Brigitte being transgender, and it didn't. That false statement, just so you guys understand, she went on the podcast and she was recounting how difficult it was for her to secure Jean-Michel Trogneau's birth certificate from the city hall, which is they're required to present that to you in France if you request it.
No, they don't. Pausing it right here because no, they don't. Birth certificates under French law, only close family relations can request a birth certificate for someone else. So in this case, the only people that could request this document in France would be Emmanuel Macron, Brigitte herself, her kids, her parents, grandparents, or her siblings. The reason for this is because in France, birth certificates aren't like they are here. They don't simply list your birthday, name, and ID number. They also are living documents that list things such as marriages, divorces, children you may have had, and so on. A non-family member cannot just demand one. That said, there are rules for who can request birth certificates in pretty much any country that makes them official documents, so there are always rules. Candace is directly fucking lying here in the claims she made in the video. The reason she and Amandine Roy were sued for slander were her direct lies about Brigitte Macron being Jean-Michel and stealing his sister's identity. Fucking absurd. More absurd because Candace knows her audience is incapable of basic fucking detective work. More lies, of course, in what she said, and I'll be brief. Poussard was the publisher and said in the interview that we ran through with a fine-tooth comb, Poussard admitted that Natasha Ray did not have all the facts and was not a journalist with proper credentials and was just pushing a theory that had no facts. He went on to try to cover his ass, but I subtitled the show as Poussard the Coward because he fled France when the issue was published, and he has stayed out of the country. But hey, here's more lies.
They told her that they didn't have it after multiple requests, and then they Xavier Poussard published the 6-part series without it, and then they suddenly contacted and said, oh, we do have the birth certificate. And Natasha Ray thought that was suspicious, so as she was being interviewed, she says, as far as I'm concerned, this is fake. This is a fake document. But it wasn't a fake document. They had just been reluctant to present it, and then they actually did present the document, and so they went, aha, we got her. It's defamation. You lied about this document being fake. It's completely an inconsequential case, but it allowed them, again, to go to the Operation Mockingbird journalists to pretend that these women were being sued about the claim that Jean-Michel Trogneau is actually Brigitte Macron, and they weren't. So if you couldn't read the lawsuit, you were believing the BBC's headline that the 2 women guilty of slandering Brigitte Macron have been found guilty and are now forced to pay $8,000 fine in damages, to a $5,000 fine to Brigitte Macron and her brother. This is completely untrue. They're, again, trying to tiptoe around what's actually happened here because they know that most people do not speak French or are not going to read the case, and the public here is just completely lying about what actually was at the center of this case. It is not whether or not Brigitte Macron is actually Jean-Michel Trogneau, and if it was, they would be suing Xavier Poussard. Like I said, they took down my interview with Xavier Poussard. It was just at about 1 million views, and they got it taken down. I think it's quite timely that they did this right before this, but you guys just be aware that everything that YouTube took down, you can find on Spotify, and we are uploading all the videos as well. That's a very powerful episode, and you can see how long he worked on this case, how obsessed he became with this case, and you will understand that he is not being pursued because of this work that he did whatsoever by the state, and that they're just being tricky with the public. All right, guys, I want to move on to this story because it just,
Okay, bull fucking shit. He isn't being pursued. So then why did he not show his face in the video? Why was he cagey about his whereabouts? And why has he stayed out of France, if he is to believe at all? Yeah, fuck that noise. He's full of shit, and Candace is running cover for him because, as I've said before, this is her personal gay frog story. She's a fucking loser. Just admit you were wrong and move on. Anyway, Candace goes on to talk about the Haitian immigrants and use it as an opportunity to blast another couple of celebrities she doesn't like, namely John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. This shit is going to get ugly, and it is our last clip.
the whole point is like rules for thee and not for me. And what better example of this? So I didn't actually know this, but John Legend actually is from the town that the Haitian migrants have been sent to. A very small population, 60,000 people, okay? 60,000 people live here, and suddenly you have 20,000 Haitian immigrants that are being dropped off. So just imagine that you live where you live right now. I don't. Maybe you live in a small town, or maybe you live in a big city. But if you are from a small town, I just want you to imagine you live in Springfield, Ohio. You love where you live. There's 60,000 people that you recognize who have a way of life that's like you, something that's cohesive, and they're just like, no, we're dropping off 20,000 Haitian immigrants. It's unimaginable that they would do this. You're talking about 25% of the population just dumped here, right? And so they're like, that might be a problem for the election cycle because people are somewhat concerned about migrants just being dropped off. But don't worry, we'll send out John Legend, who's from there, doesn't live there, but he's from there, to tell them not to worry too much about it because, like, you're doing something good for the migrants. And John Legend did just that. He released this video to speak to people from Springfield, Ohio. Take a listen.
So there are plenty of reasons why this might be a challenge for my hometown. But the bottom line is these people came to Springfield because there were jobs for them and they were willing to work and they wanted to live the American dream. They will assimilate and integrate in time, but it takes time. So I think all of us need to have the same kind of grace that we would want our ancestors to have when they moved here. With our Haitian brothers and sisters will move here too. And nobody's eating cats. Nobody's eating dogs. We all just want to live and flourish and raise our families in a healthy and safe environment. How about we love one another? I grew up in the Christian tradition. We said to love our neighbor as we love ourselves and treat strangers as though they might be Christ. So, how about we adopt that ethos when we talk about immigrants moving to our communities and don't spread hateful, xenophobic, racist lies about them.
There you have it, you guys. The problem is, like, you're xenophobic, hateful, you're lying, and he's reminding you to be Christ-like, which is incredible given the fact that he's married to Chrissy Teigen, who, like, you know, when she's not too busy, which is kind of like never, because she doesn't really do anything, she's just kind of sliding into the DMs of people telling them to die and commit suicide. But he's reminding you guys to be Christ-like, not his potty mouth wife, who routinely says awful things to people all over the internet, but, like, you need to be Christ-like because he's from Springfield, Ohio. And even though he doesn't live there, and he definitely lives in a gated community, and it's just this thing I've noticed that they're never dropping off migrants in any of these communities of the people that lecture us about accepting it. Remember when, like, Ron DeSantis had a bus of migrants up? Maybe it wasn't Ron DeSantis. Maybe actually it was Texas governor.
No,
Had
he
a bus
did
of
that.
migrants
They
up
both
to
did.
Martha's Vineyard, where the woke go to vacation. I mean, that would have been a perfect place. They got those migrants out faster than you could say migrants out. I'm talking, they were, get out of here. Oh, we love, we preach, but we do not do, right? We do not do, we preach. But our expectation is, like, we are rich enough to not have to, like, experience the various crises that we support, all in the name of love. And so I just thought to myself, this is amazing. Like, where does John Legend live? Oh, by the way, he lives in Beverly Hills. And I loved finding out that he invited Architectural Design, like the magazine, into his home so you can see how him and Chrissy, so while people are having to deal with the migrants, him and Chrissy Teigen are living like this. Take a look.
Yeah, we're not going to play any more of that. So the Haitians weren't just dropped off. The population of Springfield over the years had dropped from 80,000 to 60,000, and the Haitians were welcomed in waves. The influx has put a strain on the city, but overall the presence of them has been welcome. Candace is running on the word of the Orange Emperor because he was called out on the lie that the Haitians are out there eating people's pets, which was never the case. It was a claim made on Facebook by a woman named Erica Lee, who has said that she greatly regrets it. J.D. Vance admitted on a recent CNN interview with Dana Bash that he helped create the story and pushed it along to get attention. But Candace would have none of that because her main targets, John Legend and Chrissy Teigen, are getting involved. It's fucking petty as hell. I cut the clip where they talk about their home. Candace keeps going on about it, and I'm not playing it because she just sounds jealous about their lives. She goes on to play a song someone made on TikTok about Trump talking about the dogs and cats being eaten. We're not playing that. But Candace goes on to claim still that people are doing that. They aren't. Fuck her for saying that shit and pushing it on her smooth brain audience. Candace talks about the Shannon Sharp thing we mentioned, accidental porn, moving past it. Candace gets invited via Manect to go on a trip to Antarctica to prove or disprove flat earth theory. It's stupid and we're not fucking with it. This rounds us out for this week. Roller coaster like always. And I do most of the screaming in my car first before any of you can, unless you're also listening to this narcissistic, theocratic, fascist mama bigot during your week as well. Before we get into a soda review, let me remind everyone that you can get episodes early and support the show at patreon.com/GishGallupGirl, and we do have a support tier that is literally only $1 a month. You get episodes the night we record them, along with a separate MP3 of whatever our theme song was, and direct downloads of other things when we can provide them, such as the direct download of Project 2025. You can also follow me on Mastodon at GishGallupGirl, and I'm going to spend some time over the next few days and figure out how to post up episodes to YouTube. And I'm thinking about mirroring to Rumble because I kind of want to see how that goes. I'll let y'all know regardless. For now, though, fizzy sugar water time.
Thing is I just realized I forgot to grab the glasses.
Oh. Well, go get them.
Yep.
I need to stretch anyway.
Me too. Wait. Oh, goodness. Whew. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. This was about the same time as most of our episodes are. Okay. Yep. I just vamped for a second, as they say. Yeah, we're still very much recording.
Oh.
Yeah. Audio Veritas as much as possible.
Might help if I actually grab
the drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The drink in question and
the opener.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what is it tonight? North Star Craft Soda. What was it?
Yeah, North Star Craft Soda ginger beer.
Okay. North Star Craft Soda is yet another brand made by Blue Sun. Can we determine that? Yeah.
Well, I feel like an idiot for this one. Guess what else was a screw top?
Oh, well, honestly, their screw tops are on pretty fucking tight, so...
Yeah. What did you want to know again?
Yeah, just look it up after you pour it.
Yeah.
I was just curious, because I was pretty sure that we were like, oh, it's another Blue Sun.
Yeah, no, I remember you grabbed this one because it's bottled at the same place.
Well, I grabbed it because I was like, well, it's a Minnesota brand, clearly. I mean, the state is on the fucking label.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, great, of course it's Blue Sun, so... This was a ginger beer?
Yep.
Oh, God, wow.
Oh.
That is ginger as fuck. Just the smell alone.
See, that's something I really like about the ginger beers.
Yeah.
Up here is they are actually like ginger.
Yeah, that is got some,
like it's ginger ale with extra ginger. Ginger.
Okay. It's crafted in teeny batches using 100% real sugar, super filtered water, and premium ingredients by a handful of Minnesotans who really missed the soda we had as kids. North Star Craft Soda is a soda the way it's supposed to be. Simple, flavorful fun. Check out our 50s style returnable glass bottle at whistlersoda.com. Bottled under the authority of Blue Sun Soda Bottling Inc., Spring Lake Park. Okay. NorthStarCraftSoda.com. Ingredients: carbonated water, sugar, natural artificial flavors, citric acid, sodium benzoate, caramel color. Okay, well, let's go for it. Fuck me, that's good.
That is.
Wow, that's got a bite to it, too. That's where the ginger really comes in.
Well, what's interesting is because...
Fuck, that's incredibly good.
I've had other ginger beers, and like usually they're just like bitey ginger, but this is bitey ginger with like a sweet note to it.
Oh man, yeah, that's
like...
And it's lingering, too. I don't know if you're getting that. It's lingering right in the back of the throat, yeah.
Yeah, it's lingering right back there.
Wow.
It's actually really fucking
nice.
That's
fucking amazing.
Yeah. It's the best ginger beer I've had.
By far. Oh my god, it just gets better. Holy
I'll buy this
shit.
more often on breaks.
Yeah, right? No doubt. Oh, wow.
How's it gonna be gone? Fuck.
Yeah. That's...
I wouldn't mind getting diabetes from this. Like...
Yeah. Right? Just modify your lifestyle to make it not diabetes, you know?
Yeah. That's it.
Man, that's really good. Well, you have anything else you want to say before we round this out?
Not really that I can think of.
Well, the only thing I want to say is Candace sucks, and it's funny to watch her spiral down. And I do mean what I said, everybody. Downvote her shit as often as possible. You can downvote on Rumble.
Really?
Yeah. They have a thumb button. You can download on Rumble. So you can downvote on Rumble. Any of your podcast apps, like, I know that the majority of our audience is hearing this via the Podcast Addict app, which is great. I also use it. No complaints. But, yeah, we can also downvote on that. And I'm not sure if you can report her episodes through the app, but it's worth trying, I think. Because, honestly, if we can filter her down to just maybe even her own platform, we can strike a solid blow against her on her advertising and things like that. Because, to me, right, if I was an advertiser on her programs, and I found out that maybe she had been lying about her reach, like saying that she's available on Spotify if we can get her as a group kicked off of that. That would be, cause for a lawsuit against her from whoever was using her services. But also, again, every platform we can get her kicked off of is another blow to the finances. And that's really the only language these people speak. So I encourage y'all to get with me on that one in whatever way you can. I don't think sending letters to her advertisers is necessarily effective. I feel like anybody who's still in the tank with her right now knows what they're up for. But, you do you. If you want to send a letter to her advertisers, great. If you want to downvote her shit, great. If not, you just want to hear me rip it apart every week until she's no longer viable, I'll do that too.
Just whatever you do, stay out of death threats, please.
Yeah, no death threats. Yeah, that's not necessary. Yeah, no death threats, no calls for violence. Those aren't necessary. We can present the world her being terrible in her own words whenever needed. I mean, you can always pull down episodes of this show, cut the clips that I've used. You do you. But, yeah, please stay away from anything that would cause the FBI to show up at your front door. Don't do that. All right, everybody, that is it for now. I'm going to press the stop button and wish you all have a good week.
Yep, have a good week.
Bye-bye.